Alhamdulillah. Pak Habib, how are you? I see our dear elder brother, Pak Habib. Pak Habib now is 77 years old or 75. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, as usual, we welcome all friends, brothers and sisters from all over the world to our classes this morning. We know that in Guyana now is 9 p.m. In Nigeria, it's 2 a.m. In Pakistan, 6 a.m. And Indonesia, the largest of our audience is 8 a.m. depending on their geographic location. This morning I will moderate two sessions. Session with Sister Nurul Izzati on introduction to history of psychology, and then with Dr. Nerawi Sedu on introduction and history of the media and communication. Each lecturer will have 45 minutes. I know the topic is so huge, it can take the whole semester, but maybe we just get a tip of it. Due to the subject matter is so huge, we may not able to take question this time. We just let Dr. Izzati to use all 45 minutes for the presentation. But if you have any question, please put it on the chat box. Hopefully our technical assistants, the Julia, and our team can copy the question and put it in the word form and then forward it to Dr. Izzati. Sister Izzati may reply in our Facebook and other our social media platform, inshallah. So briefly, our dear Sister Nurul Izzati Zulkifly, hold and Master of Human Science in Industrial and Organizational Psychology and Bachelor in Human Science in Psychology from IIUM. Her expertise is in organizational psychology and now currently doing her PhD research focusing on the effect of job loss and well-being. Sister Izzati will be talking on introduction to history of psychology. Without further ado, we invite our dear Sister Nurul Izzati to present her class. Sister?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Alright. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to all. My name is Nurul Izzati Asyikin with Zulkifly. I am from the Department of Psychology from my IIUM. So I appreciate everyone for spending your time to learn about psychology this morning. So today, I would like to share on somehow, a little bit of what we discussed in the introduction to psychology. So this is basically what I want to aim. So what we can aim today. So first, we want to know what psychology is. So we are going to look at the definition with S of psychology. And then we are going to look at what are the approaches to psychology, in the sense that we are going to look at multiple approaches that represent intellectual backdrop of psychology, in the sense that what are factors that can help us to understand the topics discussed in psychology. So what are the topics covered in psychology is what we are going to do next. And lastly, what are the branches in psychology and how does it differ from other fields? So these are the four main overview, but the most that we are going to talk today is number 3. But now let's move on to the first part. What is psychology? But before I'm going to explain to you the definition of psychology, may I know, what do you understand about psychology? So when you hear the word psychology, what comes to your mind? Can anyone share with me?
I think we can write on the chat box.
Yeah.
We everyone is automatically muted, sister.
All right.
Yeah.
So hopefully you can write your opinion on the chat box. And then let's compare what do you understand with the definition of psychology. So these are basically definitions of psychology. If we take from the translation of the Greek language, basically, psychology comes from two words, psyche and logos, in which the literal meaning is the study of the soul. However, this definition can somehow be known also as the study of the mind of behavior. But if we only take this definition, the study of the mind and behavior, the history can be traced back, even before century, I mean during the Greek civilization. But the current one, the consensus that we are using is the scientific study of human behavior and mental processes. And how does it differ from the two? So basically, if we were to differentiate the current, the terminology that we usually use to define psychology is with the word scientific there. So that's what differentiate the psychology, the current field of psychology with what it was before, because the scientific aspect. So these are the approach, it resembles the approach, the current approach that the field of psychology is embracing as compared to before. So later, however, we have to bear in mind that somehow different scholars have their own interpretation of psychology, and this somehow very much related to their approach. For example, James W. Carlyle takes psychology is, the scientific study of people experiences, because to him, human behavior and mental processes is basically explain what we experience every day. Some other scholars, let's say for example Walter Pillsbury and John B. Watson. So John B. Watson is the behaviorist, and he defined psychology as the science of behavior. And this is also somehow explain his stand on psychology in the sense that, let's for example take John B. Watson. He only considered behavior as a part of understanding human nature, and he eliminated and somehow does not want to acknowledge the role of cognition to understand psychology. So basically, his approach to psychology is he look at the behavioral aspect only. So, and then the mind. So this is, I'm sorry. So the definition of the mind somehow given by, what we call that, William Wundt. So some also look at on the science of the mind. So this somehow reflects again their approaches. So the subject that they study focuses much on the mind aspect as compared to behavior and other aspect. So these are the definition of psychology. But the one that we take is here, the consensus, the scientific study of human behavior and mental processes. So hopefully things are clear up to this point. So when it comes to approaches to psychology, so how can we understand people's mind and behavior? We have quite a number of approaches. So we look at multiple approaches that represent intellectual backdrop of psychological science. So these we have 7 approaches to studying psychology provide different views of behavior, and therefore each may contribute to uniquely valuable insight. So what are those 7 approaches? We have biological approaches, and this is quite important because we are going to focus on the body, particularly brain and nervous system, to understand, how does this can cause a person's behavior or a person to behave in certain way. We also look at the behavioral aspect. This is basically just like John B. Watson. We look at the observable behavioral responses and environmental determinants. We look at people's behavior, their responses towards their responses from the environment. So we also have psychodynamic. So psychodynamic is very much related to Sigmund Freud. If you ever heard about Sigmund Freud, he is one of the forerunner of psychodynamic. It used to be called as psychoanalysis. So psychodynamic, we tap on the unconscious thought, the biological and societal demands, conflicts within ourselves, as well as childhood experiences that can somehow explain this behavior. We also have humanistic approach, and this is the one that is, offer the positive qualities as well as positive capacity for growth and free will. These are the aspects that they look in order to explain, a person's mental processes as well as behavior. We also have cognitive approaches. So in the sense that cognitive approach, we look at mental processes that involve on, our attention, our perception, remembering, memory, thinking, as well as problem solving. We also have evolutionary approach. We look at the ideas of adaptation, reproduction, as well as natural selection, and last but not least is social cultural. So social cultural, basically we look at the aspects of society in the sense of family, how the social is somehow related also to socio-economic factors. So from these approaches, we can understand, it can help us to understand topic discussed in psychology. So what are the topics that we discuss in psychology basically? So if for those who are somehow, majoring in psychology, introduction to psychology is basically one of the quite the toughest subject because of how wide it covers and how depth it covers. So this time around, we are going to cover, what are the topics discussed in psychology. So these are basically the topics. So imagine, and this is not all. Sometimes we cover more. So first and foremost, we cover research methods because remember the definitions that we adopt to the scientific studies of mental behavior and the scientific studies of mental processes as well as human behavior. So the scientific part somehow makes us have to embrace research methods. So students are usually exposed with research methods, and then these are going for biological perspective. They need to understand the brain and how is it related to behavior. We also discuss about sensation and perception as well as consciousness. We also discuss about memory, learning, um, motivation and emotion, human development, personality, social psychology, and last but not least is psychological disorder. I believe that many of us, when we discuss about psychology, this comes to our mind, psychological disorder. So we talk about, major depressive disorder, anxiety disorder, schizophrenia. So especially post COVID-19, and the current war that happens, in our world. So people can somehow discuss about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But in psychology, we start with, not understanding the psychological disorder, but most of the time we discuss about, the normal healthy people, how our daily life, our experiences. So these are the topics. So first and foremost, let's go to research methods. So here, when it comes to research methods, usually we look at, we have to understand why research methods is here. Again, I would like to reiterate because the definition of psychology is a scientific study, research methods is very important because that makes us, stand as science. So psychologists use scientific methods to address research questions. And this somehow involve, we can start with having a theory and or making observation, and then we formulate hypothesis and we test the hypothesis. After testing the hypothesis, we draw conclusions and evaluate the conclusions. So we are going to also expose the types of research methods. So we have descriptive research methods, correlational research method, experiments research methods, but not limited to, because sometimes in psychology, so if people embarking in, postgraduate study, they have psychometric research methods and so on. So another parts of research that is important is sample or other participants are basically. So the sample must be representative of the population. Let's say, for example, if we want to, study among the B40 community. So the sample must be representative of B40. Means the income should be, the family income should fall into B40. So we cannot take random people with whatever income to and then make conclusion about that about that particular group. No, because we need to get the sample that representative of the group that we are going to study. So how to select this? We can use random or non-random sample. And one more thing that when we have to, take the sample is we need to try to minimize bias. And when it comes to sampling, random samplings is usually is more favorable because of its ability to be generalized to a population as compared to non-random sample. We also no not only types of research that we need to pay attention as well as sample, we also need to pay attention to research ethics, because sometimes in psychology we deal with what we call as um se- those sensitive or somehow people who are in a group that is very much sensitive to, for example, like people who were abused, or sexually abused people, or children who were abused. So, or somehow even in income, the B40. So not everyone somehow willing to expose their income, not only those who are in the lower tier income, also in the upper tier income. So income, money, those are very sensitive issues. And it requires us, to be able to be ethical in conducting our research, because our aims is to do not, impose harm to the participants. So how to get this? Currently we are lucky because now we can get consent from institutional review. If for IIM, you can apply for IRIT. So we can also, when conducting study, we have to provide them informed consent, confidentiality. We have to tell them how we maintain confidentiality as well as debriefing. So these are the things that that we have to consider when we want to study psychology. So next one is a very important one, as quite interesting one. We are going to look at the brain and behavior. In this sense, we are going to basically look at or try to understand how does our body influence our behavior. So this is somehow, um the question that is, when we behave, what are the factors that influence our behavior? So parts of it is our body. So this body somehow very much we are focusing on the brain and nervous system. So when it comes to brain and nervous system, it guides our interaction with the world, how we move our body and directing our body to adapt to the environment. So when we discuss about nervous system, there are two parts. One is central nervous system, which, this one is central nervous system, brain and the spinal cord. The blue one is what we call as peripheral nervous system. So peripheral nervous system is the network of nerves that connects the brain and spinal cord or to other parts of the body. So when we discuss peripheral nervous system, it also somehow divided into two. One is somatic nervous system. So this one is to convey information from the skin and muscle to the central nervous system. So this is somehow can explain reflex action. And the next one is autonomic nervous system. So autonomic nervous system can also be divided into two. We call it sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So sympathetic nervous system is system that activated during fight and flight situation. So if you look at this Jiffy, so when they saw a ghost, so they're afraid. So what is the correct response? So run away from the Jiffy. So these are basically when he wants to run, so he activates the sympathetic nervous system. So after running and he feels safe, so that is where parasympathetic nervous system activated, trying to calm the body down. So not only we have to understand the central nervous system as well as peripheral nervous system, we need to also understand the brain. So parts of it is what we call as the lobes. So we have frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, cerebral, main brainstem, as well as temporal lobe. So basically, understanding parts of the brain is very much important, because understanding this will be used to understand the next topic, which is sensation and perception as well as consciousness. So for example, Occipital lobe here is responsible for sight and visual reception as well as interpretation. So not only by understanding the functions of the brain, we can understand, how we adapt to information. We can also understand disorders related to the dysfunction or somehow, when something wrong is this in this region, what will happen to them. So basically disorders related to related to the abnormality in this particular region. So for example, if one is diagnosed with degenerative cerebellum, so what will affect their behavior? So this person may struggle with balance and coordination. So not only the parts of the brain that we need to understand, we need to also understand the nerves as well as what is going on inside the nerves, which is the transmission of the what we call here is I'm sorry, neurotransmitter. So each neurotransmitter has its own function, which is very much influencing our behavior. We take GABA, for example. GABA is a neurotransmitter important in the brain because it keeps somehow many neurons from firing. So this is the functions of GABA. So if a person have low level of GABA, they are linked with anxiety. So this is how, not only that, we can also understand somehow the adrenaline, dopamine, pleasure basically. And this dopamine, the feeling of pleasure, can somehow very much related to movement and motivation. And as I told you before, understanding brain as well as the body parts, the nervous system is very much related to the many other topics of psychology. Now we are going to move to the next topic, which is sensation and perception. But before that, so hopefully you can share in the chat. So what can you see from this figure? Can you see like the two circles moving? Or you just see, different kinds of colors. So somehow when we see, this is pictures that is not inanimate picture, but sometimes we can see movement from the pictures. So this is very much related to the next topic, which what we call as sensation and perception. So when we see something, that is the process what we call as sensation. Sensation is basically we receive stimulus from environment, transform those energies to neuronal energies. So this is somehow, the first process of how we understand the world and how we react to the world. Sensation. So here, transform energies to neuronal energies in the sense that, we have to understand that there are different kind of energies. Here, for example, light is one energy. Sound is another energy. I'm not talking about aura. This is the physical energy. So, and this energy can be detected from different organ because each organ, they have their own specialized neurons. For example, eyes. Eyes have the neurons that can capture lights. This is why we can, somehow, before we can see, somehow, the process that making sense of the sense is what we call as perception. So basically, sensation is we get the information from the environment, then we transform to neuronal energies. These energies is sent to the nervous system, and they are going to interpret it. So these are the perception. So we try to make sense of what we sense. So, and when it and this somehow perception is what makes us, to see this picture moving. This is how we perceive things. And what, what interests me and what more fascinated is, when we talk about perception, the first one who can come to correct conclusion was Ibn al-Haytham. Ibn al-Haytham said, we don't see with our eyes. In the sense that we can see, it is weird. But why we can see is that the process basically happens in the brain. The interpretations that we see is basically based on the brain. So again, this is very much related to here, occipital lobe. So we may, collect the information from the environment, but the one that how we interpret the information happens in the central nervous system. These are the making sense of the sense. So, so when it comes to the rotational illusion, the two rings appear rotates different direction. This is what also we call as, illusion, perceptual illusion. And this illusion is basically adaptive. Why do we see that picture moving? One of it is because of our focus and peripheral vision, in the sense that this illusion also plays on how we direct our attention. When we focus on the ring, and then the motion perceived in another ring can shift based on our awareness. So now we comes to consciousness. So when it comes to consciousness, our awareness, it is limited. So that's why multitask is basically impossible, because our awareness is very limited. So we are, we focus on one, the other part is not our main focus. And then when we try to shift our focus, the other part is not our focus. That's why we look at it as moving. So here, when it comes to consciousness, consciousness refers to individual awareness of external events and internal sensation under a certain condition of arousal. And I would like to highlight again why this consciousness is very important, because again, it is very much related to the brain. So see here, Jiffy. So we might say that, oh, this person is drunk. Why he is drunk? Because he's taking so-called psychoactive drugs. This can include alcohol. So when you take drugs or alcohol, it alters the nervous system, alters the consciousness. It modifies perceptions as well as changes the mood. So basically, after once drinking, or smoking or taking drugs, it somehow altered what is going on in the brain. So when a person is drunk, vision is blurred, speech is impaired, sensation and perceptions are diminished, inhibitions, judgment and intellectual functions are also impaired. So, this is somehow how does our body, and not only that, when it comes to this phenomena, our behavior, the actions of taking psychoactive drugs influence the body, and therefore again influence the later behavior. So now I have 15 minutes more. So memory is another topic. So when it comes to memory, we discuss the three memories, process of memories. The first is encoding, storing, as well as retrieving. And we also talk about forgetfulness, why we forget. So in the sense of why we forget, sometimes it is due to what we call as encoding failure. So why we do, encoding is basically we get information and store it. So encoding failure is basically you don't have the information at all. Let's say, for example, one person that, I think I have bought, a pen before. Where is the pen? But basically, there is no pen because she or he basically don't buy the pen. So this is how encoding failure happen. Basically, you don't remember because there is no information to remember. You fail to encode it. We have also storage as well as retrieval. And the next one is learning. So people do associate memory and learning in the sense that, let's say, for example, following this lecture, you might feel that I need to memorize what I have, attend or what I have learned today. But when it comes to learning in psychology, learning is different. It's because learning is not only changes on what you know, what you don't know to what you know. Learning in psychology is basically permanent change in behavior. So basically, if you learn something but your behavior don't change, that means you perhaps not learn anything. But here, this is, again, this somehow, definition is very much related to, again, John B. Watson, the behaviorist, because, when it comes to learning, there must be differences or changes in behavior. So we call it, this first approach is classical conditioning. So, learning can happen by association, in the sense that, before, this is somehow Ivan Pavlov's experiments, the conditioned stimulus pair with unconditioned stimulus. The conditioned stimulus pair with neutral stimulus. After pairing many times, the dogs, without having to see the food, but only by hearing the bell, later on the dogs can salivate. So basically, it's like, school children, initially, when first time coming to school, they don't know what does it mean by bell ringing. But after a few times bell ringing, teacher said, go to rest. So they, ultimately they know, oh, bell ringing, this is recess time. It's pair. But when it comes to learning, we also learn through observation. So we don't have to, experience it on our own. We learn through other people's experience by also, somehow imitating or observing. But more importantly, when it comes to learning, what makes or what push people to change their behavior? It's the reward and punishment. And this and punishment is very much also related to motivation later on. Let's say, for example, why do people want to study hard? Because of the reward that they can get. It can be, intrinsic, in the sense that they feel motivated, they feel good, as well as extrinsic motivator. For example, like scholarship. If they work hard, they can get reward from that. Same goes to, let's say, for example, uh in work. So if they were, appropriately reward, they will repeat the pleasant behavior. But if the behavior punish, they will learn that I need to stop this behavior. So this is also parts of learning, rewards and punishment. But when it comes to reward and punishment, we learn by our experiences. In the sense that we have to be rewarded. We are the one who experience the reward, and we are the one who's experience the punishment. Then we will alter our behavior, whether to continue with the behavior or whether to stop with the behavior. But observational learning is different because we don't have to experience. We just have to see people. Let's say, for example, you have a mentor at your workplace, and you observe this mentor. So you observe him. So this is how he did his work, or this is how she did her work. So you observe whether the way she do or the way he do her work will be rewarded or punished. So from their experiences, you know that this is how I should do. If I do this, looking at she or she was rewarded, I should do this kind of behavior. Same goes to certain kind of training. Let's say, for example, a person's wanted to learn how to drive. Learning how to drive, you cannot only take theories. You have to observe how the teachers drive first, or, observe how the people's drive, and then you try yourself. So by observing, we can also learn. We also, our behavior can also somehow be motivated. So here, because of our goal. So if our goal, let's say, for example, today I wanted to know about psychology. That's why you come to the class. because you have the goal to get or to complete today. We also somehow, when it comes to learning, we have a sudden insight. So what we call the aha moment. Insight learning, the sudden insight into our understanding of a problems to solution. This can be somehow, learning, but they can also be our motivation, particularly the reward and punishment one. So why do we do what we do? Sometimes because of the reward. We want to get the reward and we want to avoid the punishment. So that is based on the external factors. We also do what we do. Motivation is the force that moves people to behave, think, and do what they do, and is energized and directed and sustained. So parts of it is not only based on the external factors, but also the internal one. So here, when it comes to motivation, first is we want to somehow, fulfill the physiological need. This is based on Maslow's hierarchical needs. And then we want to maintain our safety. And then when this is completed, we would like to have this friendship, family, and then we want to get, be acknowledged, self-esteem. And last but not least, we want to self-actualize. So this somehow that motivates us what we want to do. Somehow motivates us do what we do. And somehow this is no longer, based on the environmental factors, but we want to get the internal one. And how does this motivation somehow related to emotion? Now, because all of us want the pursuit of happiness. Happiness is basically emotions. So the approach of motivation by asking goals and values can somehow, motivate us to do what we do. So at the end of the day, the pursuit goals is happiness. So this is how motivation can somehow relate it to emotion. So the next aspect that we are going to look at is human development. So, it is somehow impressing that in Quran, Quran said about, the development of infancy from conception, before born. So that is the physiological aspect. We also have cognitive aspect of development. And we should also know this, especially among policymakers in education, because we need to, somehow make sure that whatever subjects, the syllabus that we prepared must be tally with their cognitive development. Let's say, for example, if you give, people in concrete operational stage, just like young children, but the syllabus somehow is very much here, there will be a mismatch between the two. So not only that, we also have what we call as the psychosocial, development. So if this look at the cognitive aspect, this look at how the person in relation to their social somehow interact with the world and develop. So we have several parts. This is from Erik Erikson, trust versus mistrust. We have autonomy versus shame and guilt and doubt. We also have hold on. In initiative versus guilt. We have involving industry versus competence. And more importantly here, this is what, the generations, the thing that we somehow very much pay attention about, the identity versus identity confusion. We have intimacy versus isolation, and generativity versus stagnation, as well as integrity versus despair. So this is how, if we are not going to look at only, the physical aspects, that the changes that happen throughout our life in terms of our physical and cognitive, but also how our relationship with the environment, with the socials, can also shapes our development. So the next part is personality. So personality is basically our our characters. How do we describe ourselves? So how do people know this is us? So personality have many theories and perspective, but the best one is the trait perspective. There was a personality called Ocean. So Ocean is refers to openness, conscientiousness, extraversion, agreeableness, as well as neuroticism. And these are somehow that explains how do we, our characters. And this is also important. This is one also important point before we go to the last one. Um, when it comes to personality, why it is important to know a person's character? One is it helps us to know ourselves more. The secondly is because of its utility. Utility is means usefulness. So in IO psychology, if we want to choose, person job fit in the sense that who is the best candidate that suits for this position. So not only we want to know their intellectual capability, not only we want to know their physical capability, we want to make sure that this job somehow fit their characters because we want to maximize and optimize their potential. We want to optimize, their performance. So this somehow utility these are the usefulness of understanding person's personality and knowing yourself. For example, neuroticism is somehow the traits that somehow have a relationship with the negative aspects of self. So by knowing that we have this, as let's say for example, we know that we have high in neuroticism, that helps us on how to not to change our character, but how to makes our life much more, happier in the sense we even with having this kind of personality. And I think this is the one that is everyone familiar to, psychological disorder. So psychological disorders is basically, we talk about abnormal behavior here. Behavior that is not normal. So they have three characters: deviant, maladaptive, as well as personally distressful. So deviant here, atypical, unusual, statistically unusual. Maladaptive is somehow, inability to function and stressful. And these are the aspects or the approach that we use in order to understand psychological disorder. So these are the type of psychological disorder. We have neurodevelopmental, we have anxiety and anxiety related, we have mood disorder, schizophrenia, as well as personality disorder. I think many of us somehow knows mood disorder as well as anxiety and anxiety related disorder, but less familiar with personality disorder. Interestingly, in psychology, we have antisocial personality disorder, but the antisocial personality disorder is different from what we describe. Oh, this person is antisocial. Antisocial personality disorder is not the person does not have social relationship or feeling shy to socialize with people. Antisocial personality disorder is basically the traits that most of the crime or criminals have. It characterized by guiltlessness, law breaking, exploitation of others, irresponsibility, and deceit. These kind of people they don't have remorse when they kill people. They don't have remorse if they break the law, etc. So these are basically disorder. And when it comes, these are the last part, when it comes to psychiatrists as well as clinical psychology. So people do have, somehow it is hard to differentiate between what is clinical psychologist and psychiatrist. So these are the differences. Basically, one in terms of the what we call the degrees that they have. Psychiatrist is basically a medical degree. Clinical psychology in psychology. And then the core business. So when it comes to clinical psychology, we have assessment. Meaning to diagnose this one, most of the time it was the role of clinical psychologist. and as well as treatment of mental disorder, psychological assessment, diagnosis, therapy. These are the core business of clinical psychology. So medical also does the diagnosis and treatment, but most of the time deal with medical prescription. Psychologists don't give prescription. So we also have, but we do give psychotherapy. So psychotherapy as well as intervention to the people who experience or who diagnose who with psychological disorder. That is the main parts of clinical psychology, the main business of clinical psychologists. Both must be licensed, but this one is licensed psychology. This one is licensed medical doctor. And more importantly, clinical psychologists, they look at the psychological factors and processes. You remember the 7 approaches that we discussed? So we look at that. And in clinical psychology, most of the time they use this what we call as biopsychosocial approach. And psychiatrists usually most of the time they look at the biological and medical factors. I think that is all from me because I thought that we can, if we have some more time, I would like to discuss this, but I think I don't have, I have already exceeded 2 minutes, right?
Alhamdulillah. Okay. Thank you so much, Sister Nurul Izzati, for an excellent introduction of discipline of psychology. We will be with her again next week. She will be talking about conception of psyche in psychology, Western perspective. And the third week we will be with Sister Jusmawati. She'll be talking on science of the soul, the Islamic perspective of psychology. Thank you so much, Sister. Inshallah. There are some comment from the chat box. If you can go through,
Right.
if you can respond to us, then we will upload in our Facebook or in our WhatsApp group, inshallah.
Right.
So we are now moving to our next session. I hope Dr. Nerawi is available. Dr. Nerawi is Dr. Nerawi is online.
Yes, he's here.
Oh, okay. So can we see you? Okay. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Can you unmute, Doctor?
I think, yeah, now, yes.
Yeah, okay. Alhamdulillah.
Can you hear me?
Our next class will be Introduction and History of the Media and Communication by our dear Dr. Nerawi Sedu. He is an assistant professor of communication at IIUM and obtained his PhD in philosophy and journalism from University of Queensland, and in his thesis focuses on Islamic conceptualization of press freedom in the context of Malaysia. So, Doctor, we have 45 minutes. We do not have question and answer, but we take response from the chat box. Hopefully you can copy it later on, and if you can reply to us, to our organizer, and we'll put it up in our Facebook or in our WhatsApp group. Okay. So with due respect, we invite our dear Dr. Nerawi to present this class. Come, Doctor.
Okay, should I pass the PowerPoint to you?
If you can control by yourself, it's better, or do you have it?
Let me check that I can share my screen.
Okay.
Because I have a different interface. That's the reason why.
Oh, okay. Secretary, do we have the slide from Dr. Nerawi? We can also share.
Okay, yeah, I can WhatsApp it to this particular phone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Secretary, do we have Dr. Nerawi?
Then.
What's again, Prof? Doctor?
Do we have the Nerawi PowerPoint?
I will send it to this WhatsApp.
Mm-hmm.
Let me this number.
Okay, for now, you can share from your from your side? You can share first. That later on you can send to me.
The thing is, my interface is a bit different.
Oh, okay.
I cannot find the button share screen.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
you can share to us, bro.
Okay. I will share to you, Sushara.
No. Jaya will play the form.
Okay, this one. I'll try this one first. Yeah, share. Okay, let's try first. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Yeah, I think I've already shared. I've already WhatsApp the message to this one. This number 11.
Yes. I saw it. I
Okay.
saw it.
Thank you. Okay, I think while waiting, I'll be talking rather than wasting our time. Yeah, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning, everybody. Okay. Today I'm given the chance to talk about communications. Should I say the basic understanding of communications, and then because communication is a very big area, so I'm going to focus on certain foundational aspect of communications. Yeah, I'm going to look at the meanings of communications, the theories normally used by scholars when it comes to explaining or describing communications, and then of course what does Islam say about communications? Yeah, so that is basically my intro slide. And then can you move to the second one? Okay, so basically I'm going to look at these basic components because I'm given 45 minutes only, so I'm going to be a bit restricted. Yeah. So can you go to the I'm going to look at the process, the functions and development a bit, and these are the references I'm using for this particular lecture. Basically, most of the ideas are taken from Wood, 2017, but there are other texts that you can refer to. But I would say if you talk about understanding communication, basic understanding, this is one of this is one of the best references. Yeah, and then another one is the second one is a bit more leisure in terms of approaches. But if you want to really understand how a Muslim should communicate, then you might want to read the second one. That is written by a convert. So when hearing becomes listening, I found the book interesting in the sense that according to the biography, he went to one of the Middle Eastern country and then he memorized the Quran. So basically, he knows Islam better than me. As simple as that. Okay, let's proceed further with the third slide. Can you move? Okay. So this is the key questions that we have to ask ourselves when it comes to studying communications. One thing that we have to know as Muslim, we don't want to waste our time. So before we learn something, we have to know why we learn something. So similar with communication, you have to know the benefits of why do I need to learn communications. That covers media as well. So basically, these are the common answers. Yeah. The first one is you want to be a skilled communicator. I think you know that not everybody is gifted with that ability to speak fluently with and who can manage the interaction properly. So for many people, we have to learn, we have to train. So by having a proper exposure, then only we know how to communicate properly. And of course, the second is how can you adapt at making sense of what happens in your life. So these are basically the reasons and the benefits. of studying communication. So basically, as I said just now, when you plan or when you want to learn something, you have to know the reason why, or else it's going to be a waste of your time, a waste of your effort. Yeah. So can I proceed further? So when it comes to communication, of course, these are just the basic components that you have to know. Yeah? We talk about, I think, generally as human beings, yeah, I think we are very much exposed to these two. When we communicate either verbally, non-vocally, vocally, or non-verbally, vocally, and non-vocally as well. There are four components. But among the reasons for us to communicate would be this, yeah. We develop our identities by communicating. That's the first one. Second one, of course, asking questions. We cannot. The thing that we have to know as human beings, we don't have this telepathic ability. I'm not sure, because when some people claim that you have this telepathic ability, you have the ability to really read someone's mind. And I'm not sure, because I haven't conducted a proper study. I myself, I cannot read someone's mind. I can simply assume, for example, if I see someone crying or laughing, I can simply assume whether someone is happy or sad only. But I cannot be 100% sure that the person is happy or sad. For example, maybe you have a situation where when you got your result, maybe for your degree, you felt so happy that you cried. So in that context, cries are basically indicating that you are very happy, not the other way around. So basically you talk about having to make sure that you know what you are doing. Then of course you know the answer to the questions. Then of course you have problems, and of course you have to communicate. This is one of the reason why, at least in the context of Malaysia, we have a high percentage of divorce, because according to at least the officers from the relevant authority, one of the reasons is because the couples fail to communicate properly. In the context of nobody really knows what is a problem. The problem might be A, but then when you don't communicate, then you might assume the problem is B, C, and up to Z. So that's the reason why it's very, very important for us to communicate. Or else you have so many assumptions, and of course, assumptions can be very, very very misleading, for example. Especially when it comes to the media. I think I already read media, or at least consume certain type of media. The headlines can be very, very misleading, because headline is meant to capture your attentions, but you cannot understand the whole thing by simply reading the headlines. Headlines is meant to provoke your interest. So that's the reason why when you watch a TV, for example, when you watch news bulletin, for example, you can see the headlines is a bit different from the content itself. Similar with news, for example, written news or in newspapers, for example, the headlines are like a crowd puller, but the content might be different from the headlines. Especially now we are living in an era where there are so many confusions. And of course, you need to, and the last one given is making plans for the future. For example, for husband and wife, you cannot really have a good partnership without having a proper communication when it comes to planning for your future. So these are just some examples. But you can understand why studying communication is needed, whether as a professional or whether just as a husband, rather as a wife, for example, because somehow or other the failure to communicate will somehow result to an unwanted situations. Can I proceed further? So these are the values of studying communications, personal life. As I said just now, in order to know who we are, we have to communicate. Normally, I think you are familiar with the system where at the end of a talk, there will be survey, right? And survey is basically given back to the speaker. So what is your rate? So you yourself, for example, in my case, I know whether I'm a good speaker or not so good speaker by looking at the survey or the result of the survey. And when someone say that you are handsome, when you are good looking, that will somehow affect the way we behave, the way we present ourselves. Yeah. As simple as if someone, if a guy says to a woman, "You look pretty today," that can be defined differently by different people. That can be just a compliment, and that can be understood as flirty expressions. So, but somehow or other, this will affect the way you live your life. And the second one is personal relationship. Yeah. And I'm not sure in other countries. In Malaysia, we do have this kind of workshop for future husband and wife. Yeah. So maybe they are trained on how to become a good husband, how to become a good wife. And one of the things that should be known to future husband and wife, how can you communicate properly as husband and wife? Because when you communicate as quote unquote, I'm not sure whether I should use the term lover, because lover is defined differently by different culture. Yeah. So when you are at the stage of lovers only, or in Malay we call it as kekasih only, the way you interact will be different when as compared to when you officially become husband and wife. So that's the reason why sometimes it's good to know what skills can be used if you want to improve the way you interact with your husband or with your wife. Whether you should improve the way you interact verbally, vocally, or you should improve the way you communicate non-verbally, non-vocally. And then the third one here is professional life. Yeah, especially for example, I cite a few examples here. Teaching. If you are a teacher, then of course you have that assessment at the end of the semester. In UIA, we have this SFS. Yeah, you can see one of the components whether the lecturer has delivered the lecture clearly and effectively. So basically, if your profession involves talking with people or communicating with the public, then of course you have no choice. By group, we have to learn, we have to improve the way we interact, the way we deliver our points. Yeah. Okay, can we proceed further? Then you have career success. Yeah. I always give this example to my students. Yeah, for those that are in marketing, for example, you might have the best product in the world. Yeah, but then if you fail to communicate properly, then you are not going to get anything from the product. I know in Malaysia, for example, there are so many SME, the owner of SME or small and medium entrepreneurship, who have good product. But the problem sometimes is how can you promote the product so people can get more information about your product? Yeah. So you have to be known. In order to be known, then you have to communicate, whether through social media or through other media. Right. Similar with professors or researchers. Your research can be the best research in the world, but then if nobody knows where to find the research or how can you communicate, how can you summarize the findings in a simpler format, then of course you are not going to not really benefit from that particular product. Yeah, you don't really maximize the profit from your effort. Yeah, and then of course civic life. Yeah, as a driver, as a cleaner, or as a normal human being, for example. Yeah, you need to have that skills. For example, on campus, I communicate with the administrative staff. I also communicate with the cleaners as well. So when you communicate with a cleaner, the way you communicate with a cleaner might be a bit different compared to the way you communicate with the administrator. Right. Yeah. So basically, these are the values of studying communications. Yeah. Can I proceed further? Okay. Now I'm going to define the term communication. Yeah. There are many definitions given by different scholars depending on what are you interested to find. But these are the basic components of the definitions. Yeah, this is taken from Wood just now, the book that I mentioned earlier on. Yeah, communication is understood as a systematic process in which people interact with and through symbols to create and interpret meaning. One thing that you have to know, communication is a symbolic process, yeah. I did mention earlier on, yeah, we don't have this telepathic ability. I do not know what are in your minds right now. Even if you switch on your video, I won't be able to really read I won't be able to understand why you attend this particular lecture. I can simply assume that you want to upskill yourself. So we use symbols. Of course, there are certain symbols that we use systematically. So then we use symbol, and of course symbols, the meaning of the symbol differs according to culture and context. Yeah. And then as simple as this, in the context of Malaysia, I'm going to give you an example. Yeah, one simple example. If someone says that I'm sorry, that is basically referring to I apologize. If someone says that I feel sorry, then that indicates empathy or sympathy. So this is what you have in the context of that particular communications. Yeah. And then, of course, especially right now, you have so many new jargons, new terms, which somehow define differently according to context. For example, ice, yeah, ice. I think you know that ice is just ice cube. But then, if you go to the prison or if you talk with a drug addict, ice is just a type of drugs. So when you interact with someone, you have to know exactly what is the meaning of the message, right? And then, of course, the meaning of the message differ according to individuals, right? Yeah. For example, I'm going to give another good example. Islam. For us, Muslim, Islam is a peaceful religion. But then, if you talk with someone who doesn't like Islam, of course, that has a different meaning. That has a different connotations. So having a proper interaction, having a proper understanding is very, very important in the process of communications. So you can see it's a process that ongoing. It's hard to really identify when you start, when you stop, yeah? Especially when it comes to face-to-face interpersonal communication. The moment you see someone, that is basically the first point of that particular interactions. Some people have the idea, okay, you only interact when you talk. No. For example, just now when you see me on the screen, I think you know you have some kind of judgment on who is this person. When you look at my photo, you know the person is such and such and such. So some people, they have the idea that the moment you talk, that's the beginning of the interaction. Not necessarily. As simple as if you go, maybe if you walk in America right now, if you see someone with hijab, the person doesn't have to say he or she is a Muslim. By looking at the attire, you know that the person is, quote unquote, you assume that the person is a Muslim. Yeah. Okay, let's proceed further. So communication involves these two key divisions, yeah, transmitting and receiving. So if you look at this particular statement, yeah, the process involves at least two different parties, but I'm going to simply outline what are the types after this. Yeah, with the types are not really stated in my PowerPoint. If you refer to many texts, they will have these types listed one by one. You have intrapersonal communication, extrapersonal communication, interpersonal communication, mass communication, and you have public communications. Yeah. So, but basically, the process itself covers two different divisions: transmitting and receiving. So, meaning to say you have someone who is transmitting or sharing or sending the message to you, and you have another party who is receiving the message. So, you have transmitting the message, and you have someone receiving the message. Okay, can I proceed further? So this is under transmitting, yeah, transmitting the message. You have one source. This is basically very mechanical, yeah. And just to let you know before I proceed further, yeah, these components were developed by mathematicians in the beginning. So basically, it is very mechanical, yeah. So you have a source, you have encoding. Encoding is done by the source or by the sender, yeah. Then you have the message, and of course, the then you have the channel. How do you convey the messages, whether verbal or non-verbal? I did mention just now, yeah. Verbal can be of two categories. You have verbal vocal and you have non-verbal vocal. When I speak, that is verbal vocal. When I write, when you read the PowerPoint, for example, because you don't hear anything from the PowerPoint, that is basically verbal non-vocal. So similarly, when you read a book, yeah, for example, you read a book by a very famous writer, maybe Barzinji, for example, one of the authors from IIIT. Barzinji in that context does not verbally, vocally talking to you. He is actually verbally, non-verbally talking to you. You cannot hear the voice of Barzinji in the book. So basically, these are the channels that we use. And you have another category where you talk about verbal and non-verbal vocal and non-verbal non-vocal. Non-verbal vocal would be when someone's screaming. You cannot hear any words. Those are just sound only. Even if it's as simple as this, yeah. If you ask someone, just to make sure whether someone is okay or not okay, you ask these questions. Are you angry? And then the person says, no, I'm not angry, with a high pitch. The pitch itself will say something about that person. So this is where, as a communicator, including me, I have to be very, very careful with the way I convey my ideas. For some people, I only look at the words, but for some people, they look at the words and how you say the words. Then I think this is why we have problem more often than not. Sometimes the message is positive, but then the way you convey the message is very, very not positive. I think if you look at the comments on YouTube, yeah, I think I'm fond of watching YouTube, especially the Islamic content, yeah, all this WhatsApp channel, etc., etc. Sometimes the message is very good, but the way they communicate the message is not really proper. So as a communicator, we have to be very, very careful with what we say and how we say it. Yeah. Then can I proceed further? That is basically the first four just now. Then of course, and then you have the second part, receiving the message. Yeah, decoding the message. Of course, this is done by the receiver. Yeah, and then you have receiver there, and then you have feedback. So, for example, right now it's going to be very, very hard for me to really adjust the way I present my lecture because I do not know what is your feedback. I'm not sure whether you like it or not because I don't see your face, because I don't see who are actually the listener for my for this particular lecture, right? So I can simply assume that people might like the lecture, but it's going to be very, very hard for me to really be sure that you like my lecture, unless you say, sir, I don't like your lecture. Then I can simply twist and change the way I present my PowerPoint. And then you have noises. Noises can be of mechanical, can be psychological. For example, when you interact with someone, yeah, over the phone, if something happened to the phone, for example, the volume is not clear. For example, if my speaker is not loud enough, that is basically mechanical. And then you have another one which is psychological. In you. Yeah, if you have this, if for example, when I use the term Islam, so I have a different meaning of Islam. As a receiver, you have a different meaning of Islam. Those are the noises. So sometimes the noises can affect the way you understand the message. It's like when you watch all these news channel, yeah, especially on YouTube, there's so many noises, and sometimes the noises can be very impactful, and that will somehow affect your understanding. Yeah. Okay, can I proceed further? So the elements that I mentioned just now are stated clear here. this is by another book by Dominic. That is basically, if you want to know the basic understanding of mass media or mass communication, you can refer to a book by Dominic entitled Dynamics of Communications. So Dominic has this particular, this is just one of the illustration used by Dominic to illustrate the situations. You have the source. If you look carefully, right now, for example, some of us might think that I'm the only communicator. But if the sessions is conducted like physical face-to-face in a hall, you are also communicating your message to me. So both parties are communicators at the same time. One thing that you have to know, silence can be a very powerful way of telling someone whether I like you or I dislike you. So you don't have to say anything to say whether you like someone or you dislike someone. So in the context of giving a lecture, for example, both parties are the sources of the message. So it cannot be it cannot be pictures as one after another. As simple as if you look at my camera right now, because I don't see your face as well. So I don't see where I can't really figure out whether everybody is paying attention or not. Right. But then if this is conducted live face to face, then I can simply twist here and there a bit to suit your interest at that moment. So you have the components stated here, all the components mentioned is now transmitting and receiving. Yeah. Can I proceed further? Okay, this is the meaning of systems. Yeah, I'm going to use an example here. A system consists of interrelated parts and that affect one another. So these are the examples. Yeah, for example, if you are married, yeah, and then you are working at the same time, or for example, as a mother or as a father, you have many roles. And maybe at the office you are a professor, but then at home as a father. The way you interact with your kids might be different from the way you interact with your students. So the environment, the setting will somehow affect the way you interact, the kind of message that you interact, even the expression that you use in for the interactions. For example, maybe when you interact with your eldest son, the expression is more stern compared to when you interact with the youngest in the family. Right. Yeah. And the second one is the physical environment or the time of the day. I think you know this is if you refer to the Quran, there is one verse talking about the son a child cannot enter the parents' room at 3 times. Early in the morning, noon, Zohor time, and then Isha time at night time. These are the times that kids should not enter in their parents' room. Right. So when I use the term enters parents' room just now, that is part of the interactions. It doesn't matter how close are you with the parents, because this is basically the guidelines given by Islam. So I'm going to inject bit by bit, along the way, Islamic principle in my lecture. How should we do all this? How should we perform all these components at the same time observing the Islamic principles? So, for example, in the context of, at least in my context, it's good to know. It's good to have the real example. Yeah, if I have a female student coming to see me for consultation, I have to open the door, because we don't want to have other people having that assumptions. We live in a society where sometimes people might have so many assumptions. So Islam has already outlined what would be the right way to do it. Right? So this is the system. Okay, can I proceed further? For example, this one, maybe if you understand communication from the Western perspective, because if you look at the text, Western perspective of communication is very much detached from religious interpretations. For example, this one, handshaking. How many of us know that when you handshake with someone, your sins will be forgiven? And how many of us in the mosque, the best example I would say, avoid handshaking, not knowing the benefits. Right. This is from one hadith. I'm going to read the key ideas only. Two Muslims will not meet and shake hands without having the sins forgiven before they depart. So that is, for me, a way of integrating Islamic principle in the way we interact. Remember, handshaking is a type of non-verbal, non-vocal interaction. When you shake hands with someone, that indicates something. If someone rejects someone handshaking, that means something as well. For example, if you meet someone at a conference and the person does not want to handshake with you after being offered, then you know, oh, the person is not interested to know me or to be my friend or at least to share something with me. As simple as this one as well, another example, giving salam. Right, how many of us know that giving salam is a form of prayer or dua? Peace be upon you. And how many of us also at the same time, when someone gives salam, does not reply to that salam, despite the fact that it's compulsory? And that is basically telling someone, I pray for you as well. And that is not best. These are the components which are not stated in any, at least based on my humble reading, in any of the Western texts. Basically, everything is very much mechanical. Right. So basically, I'm not sure about girls, for guys, because when I go to the mosque after prayer, we just go our own separate ways. We don't really handshake, not knowing that Allah has given us so many opportunities to clean ourselves or to cleanse ourselves. Yeah, that is one of the example. Can I proceed further? The next point. Okay, this is another one. This is verbal and non-verbal. I think many of you are familiar with this particular hadith. This is a long hadith, but I shortened it because I just want to fit everything in one single PowerPoint. I think you know who is Mu'az. Mu'az is one of the closest companions of the Prophet. So I highlighted two items here. The first one is gain me admittance to this. I'm going to read the first two parts. It was narrated that Mu'az bin Jabal said, I was with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on a journey. One morning I drew close to him when we were on the move and said, O Messenger of Allah, tell me of an action that will gain me admittance to paradise and keep me far away from hell. There are many, and I just go straight to the one that I highlighted. And then, of course, you can see here, then he said, shall I not tell you of the head of the matter and its pillars and pinnacle? Is jihad. And then he said, shall I not tell you the basis of all that? I said, yes. And the Prophet said, he took hold his tongue. That is double emphasis. The Prophet used non-verbal expression to strengthen the ideas. You really have to guard your tongue if you want to go to heaven. And this is not really stated in any of the texts that we use, which are basically written by the Western scholars. So you can see Islam has already given us that kind of protections or guidelines. So you can see the Prophet used two cues here. The first one is the non-verbal cue, which is holding his tongue and then saying, refrain this. You have to watch, you have to be mindful, you have to be watchful. Okay, basically these are just examples, and you can find many other examples if you refer to different texts written by Muslim scholars. Can I proceed further? Then symbols. As I said now, we don't have that direct mind-to-mind interactions. We have to admit that we don't have that ability. Maybe for some they have. I think the stories indicating that the prophets or the rich people, they know at least some kind of, they are given that the ability. But as ordinary human beings, we don't have that. We don't have that telepathic ability. I do not know what is the mind of in your mind right now. You might not like my lecture for whatever reason, and you might not know what is in the mind of your companions as well. So we use symbols in order to share the ideas. We have to use symbols. Remember that symbols, the meaning of symbols reside in the people, not in the symbols. Right. So as simple as for us Muslim, Islam means peace. For the Muslim haters, Islam means chaotic. House, for example, the first one is very house is very concrete. Yeah, I want to buy a house. Then you have another one. The meanings are more or less similar. Then you have another one, home. Your house might be a house, but not your home. Yeah, this is the reason why when people say that, oh, I have a big house, but that's not really my home. You don't feel homey in that particular house. You don't feel comfortable. You don't feel safe in that house. That is the physical house. And that's the reason why in Malaysia we have so many tagline or slogan. My house is my heaven. But are you sure that your house is your heaven? Right. So the way we the terms that we use are symbols that can have many meanings. For example, if you live with the Malay, maybe the Malay letters would be the Malay words would be different. But more often than not, we borrow terms from Arabic or from English. Right. There are also terms which are very much from the Sanskrit, right? So we have to always remind ourselves, even as a professional communicator, you have to know symbols are only symbols. Human beings, they are the one who attach meaning to the symbols, right? Yeah. So there are many examples of this if you refer to many different texts. Can I proceed further? Then meanings. This is the one I mentioned just now, where I talk about what kind of meanings attached to that particular symbols. For example, as this, if you see someone using apple, the meaning is, oh, he must be rich. I assume that is the case, because apple is very expensive compared to the other brands. If you see someone driving Porsche or Tesla or BMW or Mercedes, that is only symbol, but then that indicates the status of that person. It's like when you look at my name, yeah, I have no professors. But then if you look at other people, they have professors. So you can see professors has certain meaning. Professors symbolizes higher level of knowledge. So that's the reason, just to let you know my experience as a lecturer. Yeah, maybe some of you are also a lecturer. This is my interaction, not to be generalized to other people's experience. At least on campus, yeah. Some students, or at least a few students, they only give salam to professors, not doctors. The reason why? Because professor has more weight. So salam is attached with professorship. In that context, we shouldn't be, according to Islamic perspective. And we commit that errors more often than not in our daily interactions. As simple as this, yeah. I give salam to my friends only. I don't give salam to the other people in the group, which is not correct. Salam should be given to everybody. You are spreading peace, am I right? Peace can be understood as peace literally, and peace in terms of I don't disturb you, but then that provides some kind of prayer as well. So basically, we have, I myself, I miss many chances, yeah, of spreading peace. Right. Yeah. So meanings differ according to your background, your knowledge, and of course the people who are your companion system. Yeah. For example, Islam, the word divorce, yeah, is a very sensitive, is a very sensitive symbol. So a husband should not be uttering the word divorce, I divorce you, whether jokingly or seriously, unless you have that intention to divorce your wife. Maybe in the Western culture, there is nothing. I can simply say I divorce you, but then there is no implications. But in Islam, the moment you say you divorce your wife, then you are divorced. That is the difference between Islam and that is the difference between Islamic perspective and a non-Islamic perspective. Even as simple as this, yeah, when a daughter or son say to parents, that symbolizes ungratefulness. But then if you go to YouTube right now, you can see so many challenge saying shut off to your parents, because that is the culture in that particular country. But as Muslims, that is a no thing to do. And I strongly believe everybody knows that paradise is basically with the mother. And of course, in one hadith, the Prophet stresses the mother 3 times, then only the father. So mother has certain meaning. In Islam, is highly cherished. But maybe not in other culture, or maybe not in certain culture. That's the reason you have challenge. If you have the time after this, even right now, you can check YouTube channel. Go for shut up parents, then you can see so many people accepting that challenges. Right. Can I proceed further? Then you have models. I'm going to go through, I have until 10:45, right? Or 10:30?
Yeah, 10:30, but I can have 3-4 minutes.
Okay,
no
yeah.
problem.
So there are some basic, there are many models for you to understand, yeah? Can we scroll, can you go further? This is a linear model. I just want to go to the last model. Can you move to the last one? Okay, scroll further. Yeah, this is the first model, which is done. This is developed by mathematicians. Yeah, so it's very mechanical as it is now. Nothing to do with the soul. You look at the system. You look at human beings as number only. They don't have anything with them, except for numbers. Can I proceed further? Then go further, because I have 3 minutes only. Then go with the last one. Okay, last model, interactive. Okay, can you go to the illustration? Yeah, so this is basically the latest model describing how what is communications. So the way we interact is very much affected by who we are, the surrounding, and of course our understanding of the world as well. Yeah. So then I proceed further. You can simply refer to my PowerPoint later. Can I proceed further? But then can you click and click? Yeah. So in Islam we have this Tawhidic framework. So whatever we do as human beings should be guided by the guidelines given by Allah. Nothing should be outside that framework. Remember, it's not a model, it's not a theory. I was commented by my supervisor when I did my PhD a few years ago. Are you sure this is a theory? No, this is not a theory, because you cannot test and pre-test Tawhidic principle. As a Muslim, we have to accept the fact that this is the only way. So whenever we interact with people, I have to remind myself I'm only a servant of Allah. So can we proceed further? Then this is by one of the scholars in Islam, by Maulana. So you can see here, Tawheed is if exercise and practice, then you can see media communication do not have meaning where there is no social accountability. So we need to have that awareness. We need to remind ourselves whenever we say something, there are consequences of our actions, whether we like it or not. There is no such thing as action without consequences. Can I proceed further? Then further, you can see here, this is a verse from the Quran, Surah Qaf, chapter number 50, verses 16 to 18. You can see, I highlight the last one, verse 17. Not a single word is uttered by one, but there is a watcher near him ready to record. So as a Muslim communicator, including myself, yeah, because teaching is not about teaching people, it's about teaching yourself as well. So I have to be very, very mindful with whatever elements or statements or ideas that I share with anybody or with my student. Because none is not recorded. Everything is recorded. Can I move further? And then this is basically the history of mass media. So I think basically the process is more or less similar. And then I won't be able to cover this one. I just want to show you this one. This is basically the movement of what you see right now from the earlier period to now. So basically, I've covered the basic elements of communication because it's a bit hard to cover everything within 45 minutes. But I hope you get the key understanding of how do you see communication as a process. I think that will be all from me. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah. Thank you so much, Doctor, for the presentation. Next week we will be with Professor Datuk Syed Arabi Aidid on research, trend and ethic in media and communication, on the second lecture on communication. Thank you, Doctor. We will take a break until 10:30 Malaysia time, and then we will continue with the next class on Islamic perspective on political science by Brother Dr. Zacky, followed by Islamic perspective on sociology by Dr. Azizan. Thank you so much. I will take a break and we'll see you all again at 10:30 Malaysia time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala. Oh, sorry, by 11 Malaysia time, not 10:30.
Assalamualaikum Dr. Zacky.
Waalaikumsalam. Am I audible?
Yes, Doctor, you can check.
Shall I share my presentation?
Yeah. Check the share first.
Is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
How are you, Doctor?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah, Doctor. You can start, Doctor. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wa bihi nasta'in wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Uhayyikum bi tahiyyatil Islam tahiyatan yatibu jazaha miska wa raihana. Tahiyatan ahlul jannah yawma yalqawnahu salama. Wassalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ikhwanil kiram wa akhawatil kiramat. Today, I'm in front of you, Juwairiyah binti Haj Ahmad, a PhD candidate from IIIM. I will be moderator in this session. And before we proceed with our lectures, let me introduce a bit about our profile of our doctors, a little bit, brief profiles. Dr. Zacky Fouz is an assistant professor of political science in the Department of Political Science at the International Islamic University, Malaysia. His research field cover political theory, Islamic political thought, and Muslim minority studies. And now he's proceed his lectures in IIIM. Without further ado, we will hear from his lectures today on the topic Introduction to Political Science. Without further ado, فليتفضل مأجورة دكتور.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Nahmadu wa nusalli ala Rasul Kareem. Amma ba'd. Thank you, dear sister Julia, for this kind introduction. And in today's lecture, this is the first of 16 lectures to come. And so in this lecture, I am tasked with introducing political science as a field of study. So in my today's lecture, I will try to cover few important topics that can guide our listeners to understand what is political science as a field of study today, and how Islam can contribute to further development of the discipline. And so today we are going to discuss a few important themes. The first, I will discuss a bit about what is politics. What do we mean when we say the politics? When we use the concept politics, what do we mean? This is what I am trying to address in my first part of the lecture. Then I will move to introduce politics as a field of study, and which is political science. What does it mean? What are the definitions, and so on. And the third, I will discuss about the scope of political science. What are the major fields or subjects in political science? What are the subfields in political science? Then I will discuss about political science in its relationship with the other human sciences, how the political science is evolving as a field of study, and how it made relationship with other human sciences to expand its field. And finally, I will give a few remarks about political science and Islamic perspective, because we have a separate session on this particular theme next week, hopefully. So what is politics? This is the first question that I am trying to deal with. So when we talk about politics, people understand the concept differently, and different scholars have provided different interpretations to understand the concept. And we have different religious traditions have different meaning assigned to the concept of politics. But here, I am trying to introduce three important meanings political scientists try to deploy in terms of understanding the concept. And the first meaning of politics is the art of government, and which is one of the oldest meanings given to the politics, or at least meaning to given to the act of politics. So this art of government as a meaning of politics given by the Aristotle in his book Politics. So this is one of the oldest interpretation of politics. So he wrote a book in this subject, a separate book in the name of Politics, where he defines this concept. And in his definition, or this concept, Aristotle derives from the original word of polis, which is the city-state, meaning city-state in Greek language. So here what Aristotle trying to convey is that at least here the Aristotle in trying to define the concept as a regulating, as a mechanism to regulate the affairs of the polis, meaning the city, or at least at least regulating the public affairs in the city. So this is the meaning Aristotle gave in his book when he used the concept politics. And here he mainly explore the idea of authority and how the right of a person or institutions to make decision on behalf of the community. So there will be people who do politics, meaning to say who has the authority, legitimacy to take decisions on behalf of the community in regulating their affairs. So these leaders do politics, meaning they regulate the public affairs of their city. This is the meaning initially given to politics by the Aristotle. So politics, where this politics takes place in the Aristotelian perspective, politics takes place in state institutions like parliament or like public or legislative assemblies, where you see politicians come and make policies or debate laws and make policies or new laws which is very much related to the public affairs of the particular city, or in this to the modern context, particular state. So this meaning of art of governing the public is the first initial meaning given to the idea, or at least given to the concept of politics in the ancient Greece, and which we still use even today. Now, what is the second meaning? Second meaning is right opposite to the idea of at least Aristotelian idea of politics. Here, the politics is defined from the perspective of the society. Aristotle defines politics from the perspective of the politicians, or at least the elites who govern the society. So the power that they have in regulating the society, that is politics for Aristotle. But here, some political scientists define politics from the perspective of society. They call it politics is a socially embedded activity. What does that mean? They say the locus of power is not with the politicians, but with the people. So actually, they argue that we need to interpret politics from the perspective of society. For example, they say people vote, people participate in the elections. It is people who, through voting, through participating in the elections, it is people who authorize the power transition from party A to party B. And so they are the key actors in the political sphere. It is. So we need to incorporate society into the dynamics of politics, according to the second definition. And they are the core of politics. Because more than voting and authorization of power, it is society. They engage in political discussions. They watch political debates. They participate in political gatherings, and they make opinions about political changes. And also, they actually they play a major role in public opinion making with regard to the political dynamics. So more than politicians and those who are in the power, it is the society that need to be considered as the core of politics. So here, the definition, the politics is being understood as a social activity, or at least socially embedded activity. So politics needs to be seen from the perspective of society and their activism with regard to the political power and authorization of power or power transition. This is the second perspective perspective with regard to the defining what is politics. So you can see here in the picture. So there are people who are holding holding messages, conveying the idea of we need to vote with the clarity, and voting is the people's power. So this picture informs us the second dynamics, or a different perspective of politics. Then the third aspect, or third meaning, which is given to the concept of politics. Here, political scientists argue beyond the art of governance, beyond the socially embedded activism, the core of politics is not the society. It's not the politicians. Beyond that, the core of politics is power. Politics is equal to power. Politics is an act of seeking power. This is the third idea, or at least the third important idea shared by the political scientists in defining the concept of politics. Here they argue, or at least they come to this conclusion based on three important premises. They argue the core of politics is not to serve the people, or at least not to take care of the well-being of the people. Rather, the core of politics is to compete, or at least to involve in competition to capture the state power. This is the core of politics. Why politicians involve in politics? and why are the civil society actors involved in politics? Just to shape the state power in accordance with their interest. So this is one of the premise that they define this third concept of politics, which is power. The second is humans are naturally driven by self-interest. So they say that humans are naturally driven by self-interest, meaning to say that they are always seeking, or at least trying to serve their self-interest, their own objectives through whatever the human interactions they involve in. So part of that is politics. So they come to politics just to serve their self-interest, which is their natural instinct. So they just try to cater their interests through politics. The third important premise in defining politics as a locus of power, which is the hegemony. So you see, they argue in politics, wherever politics happen, there will be hegemony. Politicians use power to influence the people, to subjugate the people, to drive the people in a direction that serve their own interest. So they argue altogether the current, they argue that this is the reality of politics that out there in our world. So through governing the people and through making laws, through policies, the end game would be to serve their own party, their own self-interest. This is politics in reality, according to the some other political scientists. Especially, there is a famous definition of politics you can see here in this picture, and also a quotation. Harold Laswell, he's one of the famous political scientists in the West, and he defines politics as who gets what, when, and how. It's about sharing the power. It's about grabbing the power. It's about all about politics is just it's a journey, or it's a struggle to capture more power. That's the essence of politics, according to Harold Laswell. And from this quote, many political scientists develop this idea of politics as just an act of seeking power. There is no welfare there. There is no public interest there. And these are the three important aspects political scientists discuss when it comes to the concept of politics. But you can see in all these three aspects, there is one common similarity, or there is a shared idea in between all these three, either politics as a government, governing art of governance, or politics as a socially embedded activity. All the politics is an act of seeking power. The central notion that we can find all these three definitions is politics is all about power, because without power, you cannot govern. Without power, society involved in society, they involved in politics through voting, through watching political debates. Why? Because they know that politics provides power to the politicians to regulate their affairs. And so the power becomes the central aspect of politics in all these three definitions. So we see here that if it is the power is the central notion in politics, then we can argue where this power is located. So in current context, the power is located within state. So the state becomes a very important entity in the modern world when we're talking about politics, because the state is the one and only entity that monopolizes the power, that give power to the people or the politicians to regulate the society's public affairs. So the state becomes one of the important organs of power in modern times. So when we talk about politics as a field of study, we see the most of the definitions revolving around the concept of state, because state is the central organ of power. So because state, without you have a even to practice the art of governance or to involve in state affairs, you need to obtain the state power in a legitimate way. So because the state that gives power to the people, state monopolizes the power. So because of that, when we define politics, we always see most of the definitions revolve around the state, especially in the modern context. So now I'm moving to my second part, defining politics as a field of study. Before that, we looked politics as an act. What does it mean? Now we are moving to the second part, politics as a field of study. Here I have provided three important definitions to define the politics, or you can take this as a definitions of political science. Political science is the specific field of study that analyzes and explores the political phenomenon. Here you can see three important definitions. The definition number one, a branch of political science is all about the science of the state. It's science of the state. Political science is equal or at least synonymous with the science of the state. Why? Because state is the locus of power. So power, when we see that, when we define or at least understand the power is as the central notion of politics, so we end up with the definition of the science of the state is the political science. So first definition says the branch of social science. Political science is a branch of social science dealing with the theory, organization, government, and the practice of the state. The second definition, you can see the science which is concerned with the state, which endeavors to understand and comprehend the state in its fundamental conditions, in its essential nature, its various forms of manifestation, and its development. Political science is that a part of science which treats the foundation of the state and principles of the government. You see, in these three definitions, the key word is the state. The key word is the state. All three definitions, though the wording is different, all three definitions agree that the state is the key actor in political science, or key theme in political science. So we see that power is the core of politics. So the power lies in the state. So political science studies about the state. So through studying the state, political science trying to engage with how state power is regulated, organized, and how state power is distributed among different entities of the state, like legislature, judiciary, and also the executive. These are the major business. Analyzing these dynamics is the major business of political science as a field of study. Now I am moving to my third part, which is political power and Islamic perspective. So here I touch upon very briefly about the Islamic perspective of political power from the Islamic perspective, because I will be discussing this theme separately in the coming lecture. For an introduction, I share a brief overview about this. So in political science, since political science studies about power and state, so there is a famous quote in political science textbooks. If you read, you will easily come across this statement. power tends to corrupt, and the absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, since political science and politics is all about power, and so we hear most political scientists say that there is a fundamental principle here that if one accumulates power to an absolute extent, he will obviously become corrupt, because it's whatever, even though you are a good human being, sometimes political power, if you accumulate power, that might lead you to the corruption and also to become a hegemon or try to manipulate the mass. So this is a common principle in political science. We generally come across this statement. So here we see the role of revelation in politics, because here Islam brings certain moral frameworks to regulate the power and to address the question of how to use the power. Islam says, if you read the revelation, if there is a Quran and Sunnah, there's a fundamental principle with regard to the power, also all types of power. It says the source of all power is Allah Almighty in Islam. It's God. So Islam says the real power is with the God. So we are human beings as the vicegerents of the God. We are accountable to the power that we use today to regulate the society. So when we manage power in involving politics, we are accountable to the God, because the power is given to us by the God. So all source of true power is the God. So there is an accountability dimension Islam introduces when it comes to the power from an Islamic perspective. So Islam strongly argues that power needs to be put in a moral framework, an ethical framework defined by Islamic revelations. So Islam also further says that power is a means to serve God. It's not an end itself, as it is defined by contemporary political theorists. We saw that politics is all about power. So one of the important definitions given to politics by the political theorists today, and they say that politics is all about power, and power is the end game of politics. But here Islam says it cannot be like that. Power needs to be put in a moral framework to serve God. So when you use power, you need to take into account that you need to use that to get or to make this world peaceful and also enduring your blissful life in the hereafter. And also you need to use politics as a source of mercy and justice for humanity. Through these two principles, you can serve God. And so this, if you keep or if you put these two objectives if you understand these two objectives in regulating the power or in managing the power, Islam says you will be able to use this power in the interest of the public and also to get the mercy of the God. If you forget these principles that is defined by the revelation, you will end up as the first statements tells us. It will corrupt us, and if we get the absolute power, it will corrupt us absolutely. If you want to escape from this destiny, you need a revelation. You need Islamic ethical framework to guide you in managing the political power. And so with that, I am moving to the next important aspect of political science, the scope of political science. So you see here, I have identified 4 important branches of political science as a field of study, and these subjects are core, we say the core subjects of political science. Political science is a It's a big discipline. It's expansive discipline that contains many aspects of power dynamics. So mainly, when we define the core of political science, we usually identify 4 subjects within that. One is political philosophy or political theory, which is the core part of political science. That aspect study the political ideas, ideologies, and philosophies. So, especially some universities, you will find the course political theory. In some other universities, you will find the course political philosophy. The most times, both these courses are offering the same subject. So, in this aspect, you study political ideas of the political thinkers like Plato, Aristotle, Machiavelli, and Augustine, Al-Mawardi in Islam, Ibn Taymiyyah, and also modern times, Thomas Hobbes. So you study the ideas of political thinkers in a historical perspective, how the political ideas evolved from in a historical context, what are the different historical events shaped those ideas. And this is the branch we call political philosophy. The second important branch of political science is international relations. In this branch, we study the relations between the nations and global politics and international organizations such as UN, ASEAN, EU. These are the key themes in this section of political science, international relations. I think we have a separate session on this topic as well in this certificate course. And the third important branch is comparative politics. In this branch, we study or we compare different political systems across different countries to understand how different countries succeeded and how democracy, for example, democracy succeeded in some countries and it has failed in some other countries. So these comparisons help us to understand the nuances of political phenomenon. So comparative politics help us to understand these differences and how political concepts are put into practice in different contexts, similarities, and the challenges they have in developing the political societies. So we study all those themes in comparative politics. We also have a separate session on this in this course. And also public administration is the final important section of political science where we study the policy making process within a state and also how policies are being implemented and also how policy impact on the society. So whole sort of policy making or policy making process and how policies are debated and constructed and also how policies are institutionalized. All these themes will be covered in public administration section. So just to make you aware that we will have a separate topic in this theme as well in this course. So you will cover all these 4 different dimensions of political science in this course. Hopefully in the upcoming lectures. So this is the basic scope of political science as a field of study. And what are the political science? Then finally, political science and its relationship with other human sciences. This is a very important subject to discuss. Because political science, as I defined you, as I explained to you, its definitions revolve around mainly the state and state power and regulating the state power and also policy making. And these subjects, these themes we discuss within the political science. But now the political science as a field of study is keep expanding and it tried to engage with other human sciences in order to develop political science as a field of study. So you see subjects like political economy, You will find this course even in economic department, economic faculties and departments, and also in political science department, where they study political subject of political economy. This is not considered to be a core subject of political science, but this is now becoming a core subject of political science, as we now see the evolvement of the field of study by making relationship with the other human sciences. So political economy, where we study how economics of a country impact on the policy making process, and also political dynamics of a particular country or the particular regional politics. So economy and its relationship politics that we explore in this particular subject. And also political sociology is another important subject that we discuss in political science, and how sociology or sociological theories help us. Especially we see how sociological theories help us to understand the power dynamics within the country or within the given region. So this is what we explore in political sociology. And there is another important subject in political science which we call political psychology. How psychological understandings, psychological theories, principles, and latest developments guide us to understand the power dynamics within a country. So the political sociology is one of the leading subjects in contemporary political science. Though despite we don't consider this subject as a core of political science, but it is gradually become the core, since the world is moving more towards a multidisciplinarity. So we try to explore the political dynamics through the lenses of different disciplines. Also this is another example, the political communication, how communication theories and ideas help us to understand political dynamics and political party dynamics, how parties communicate with the people, politicians communicate with the people. So these are the communication theories help us to understand the power shifts and political behavior of political actors within a country. So political science is now moving more towards multidisciplinarity and getting help, assistance from different fields to understand our core business, which is to explore the political behavior of society and also politicians. And so this is the current development of political science. And that's all from me for today. And I think this is the overall view of political science as an introduction. I hope that if any one of you have any questions, we have 3 minutes more. Yeah, 3 minutes more if you have, you can ask the questions. And the next week, hopefully we will discuss political science from the Islamic perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for your wonderful session. We open for the Q&A. Anyone have the question, you can raise up your hand. And I see there is many questions from the chat box, Doctor.
Okay, I'll see.
From Mayanja. So the third perspective is not the Islamic question.
Yeah, that's what I explained in my presentation, that it's mainly come from Western perspective. That third perspective is that politics is all about power, just power seeking. That's the third definition. And in Islamic perspective, just as I explained later, that Islamic perspective of power is that power needs to be practiced in the light of revelation, and moral ethical framework defined and developed by the Quran and Sunnah. So that is the Islamic perspective of power. But here, politics as a sheer power-seeking act, or power is the end of politics, is not an Islamic, as correctly pointed out by our brother there.
Okay, there, Brother
Anfas,
Anfas. Brother Anfas, you can unmute yourself to ask the question.
Yeah, you can unmute and ask the question.
Brother
Anfas?
Anfas? Okay, brother, you can ask question. We can hear you, brother. Maybe his internet very low, that's it.
Yeah.
So we can hear from him. Anyone else have question?
If anyone don't have a question, I can add one point as a final note here, madam.
Yes, sure, Doctor.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I explained in this presentation that politics has is being defined in three different perspectives: at the art of governance, and also as a socially embedded activity, and also as an act of seeking power. So all these definitions revolve mainly around regulating the public affairs of a community. That's what politics usually happens. Politics usually happens in public sphere. But there are few scholars who argue from the postmodern perspective that politics needs to be, the scope of the domain of politics needs to be expanded to include even the family and even the institutional life of the society. For example, they argue the power dimension is even happening within the families, even within the institutions that is not we consider being part of politics or public affairs. So power is everywhere. So we need to take into account these all dimensions, even the family life, the relationship with the husband and wife, from the perspective of power perspective. This is the postmodern perspective of politics.
Okay. There is a question from the chat box.
Okay.
From Sister Wan Ainun, she asked about, can the second definition about of politics be applied to the Asian context?
Can the second definition of politics be applied to ancient context? Asian context or ancient context? I couldn't catch her. So let me just a general note that pre-modern context, okay, and he said the pre-modern context. Yes, pre-modern context mostly. So in the pre-modern world, you see politics not as something. Pre-modern communities didn't see the state as we see it today. Today's state is very sophisticated, and it has developed to a great extent to control the societies. But pre-modern societies, the political system are weak, so community has the higher power over the political elites. And so you can see mostly the community leaders, tribal leaders, and also religious leaders sometimes lead the communities. They are being respected by the people in the pre-modern world, because politics largely been seen as a socially embedded activity. It's people who self-regulate. People were self-regulating themselves in the pre-modern world most of the time. It is the modernity's impact that we see today, the state monopolizing all the aspects of regulating the public life. So there is the state becomes a central actor in modern time. In pre-modern times, it as she correctly pointed out, it's the society is the primary actor. You see in the Islamic tradition as well, in Waqf, mainly played a main role in empowering the societies to regulate their life, regardless of the relationship with the state. State played a very minor role in empowering the societies in the pre-modern world. Rather, the society self-regulated themselves with the help of their own wealth. This was the pre-modern society. Pre-modern politics was mostly the socially embedded activity, as she correctly pointed out.
Okay, one more question, Doctor.
Yeah.
From Sister Atika, she asking, what about war? How did politics play a role?
Sorry, where?
She asked about the politics, how the politics play a role in the war.
Politics play a role in the world.
War.
War. Thank you for the question. And so it's, very interesting question. Generally, we use politics in the common sense, in the common everyday language. We use for example, in the context of Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we say politicals. Both the parties should resort to the political solutions rather than military. We use this statement often today. In the media, you can listen to this statement. Here, the politics is meant as non-violent methods. Non-violent methods. So, violent methods are being characterized as a military solutions, and non-violent methods are being conceptualized as political solutions. So here the politics is mean by non-violent methods to solve conflicts. So this is a general approach. So war is not politics. War is a violent methods to solve a conflict. The peaceful method to solve a conflict is politics. This is the general approach. But some scholars would disagree with that. They say that even war is a kind of politics. It's a kind of politics. Though we generally understand war is different to politics, politics is a peaceful mean to resolve a conflict, while the war is a violent mean to resolve the conflict. But when we take a general sense, war also part of politics. They argue. So there is a different perspective in this aspect. Some perceive politics to be a non-violent, some perceive war as part of politics. So thank you for that question, and I think this my answer. I hope that clarified his question.
Okay, maybe we have one last question from Brother Azhari. Brother, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Miss Protos. I would like to me opportunity to ask Mr. Dr. Zacky Fouz. Assalamualaikum, Doctor.
Waalaikumsalam.
Okay, Doctor. I would like to ask about Islam and politics.
Okay.
In religion and politics cannot be separated. And our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a leader of the country and also leader of religious. So now the relationship between religion and human rights today is always like it to a country's political system. I would like to ask about how exactly is the concept of rights in Islam related to this political system to here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brother Azhar, for your question. I think I will keep that question for next week session, since we are going to discuss religion and politics in Islamic perspective exclusively in the next week. So hopefully, I think my next week lecture will help you to understand and clarify your question, inshallah.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor, for your wonderful sharing lectures today. And inshallah, we will see doctors in the next weeks, inshallah.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Mr. Juwelia. Thank you for all for joining with us today.
Okay, with this last session, inshallah, we will meet with Dr. Nur Aisah Areff. Doctor, are you here? Doctor? Dr. Aisah. Dr. Aisah.
Yeah, I'm already unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes, doctor. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Can you test the share slide?
Test what, sister?
Share slide. You have slide, right?
Yes. Let me try to check whether I can share the slide or not.
Okay.
I'll try to use PDF. I think that is the safest that I can do right now.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So
okay. Before we begin with lectures with Dr. Aisah Areff, give me a bit time to introduce his biodata, brief biodata. Dr. Aisah is an assistant professor at the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at the Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman Kuliah of Islamic Real Knowledge and Human Science in International Islamic University, Malaysia. She specialized in gerontology. A little bit difficult for me to spell it. She has a PhD in anthropology and sociology from the United Kingdom University Kebangsaan Malaysia, and MA in sociology and anthropology from the International Islamic University Malaysia, and also she received her BA in fiqh and usul fiqh from the International Islamic University Malaysia also. Okay, without further ado, we will listen from her lectures today about on the topics of introduction to sociology and anthropology. فليتفضل مأجورة دكتور.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Nur Aisah binti Areff. Actually, I'm having a bit of a problem with this slide thing because we keep on changing the system. Because before Google Meet, and then after that Microsoft, and now Zoom. So I'll try to check a bit because now I can't move. All of a sudden, I just came out from the system. Okay, let me see.
Assalamualaikum, Doktor. Assalamualaikum, Doktor. We can't hear from you, Doctor. Maybe you unmute yourself. Yeah. Unmute, Doctor. It's not clear. It's not clear.
So what is going on? But I just
Okay,
hope
okay.
that everything will be okay. So I'm going to share my screen now, and I hope it works. Okay. Okay, let me see again.
Yes, now we saw it.
Okay. It's like
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay. This course actually, for introduction, actually, it takes 6 hours to teach. So we're going to condense it into 45 minutes. So I'm trying my best to explain it. And I try to integrate as much as I can based on my experience in IIUM for more than 30 years as a student and as a staff. So the first thing that we're going to do is to define some of the concepts which are considered important, especially what is sociology. And then we are going to see how sociologists view the world, especially in terms of social behavior. And then at the same time, we try to trace back a bit on the history of why sociology as it is today, and why we need to have this Islamization or whatever that we are trying to do in IIUM. Okay. If you look at this ayah, we are talking about all humanity. Indeed, we created you from a male and a female, and from us, from peoples and tribes, for us to know one another. So this is very sociological. So we are talking about the social life. So God creates us from so many different groups. The most basic, we are talking about men and women, and then after that, we are talking about you are being put into a tribes, different ethnic groups and whatnot. But it is not for us to fight with one another, but for us to know each other. So that is the most important premise when I talk about sociology. When we go to the definition, at least this is the two most quoted definitions on sociology. So sociology is the systematic study of human society and social interaction, or sociology is the scientific study of human societies. But whatever it is, if you look at in these two definitions, there are two important words here. In the first definition, it is systematic. In the second definition, it is scientific study. Okay, so if you were to look at it, it is vice versa. They are the same thing. If you are scientific, you have to be systematic. So if you are systematic, practically you are doing more or less science. You're talking about steps by step. So sociology is considered a science, but not a pure science or physical science, but it is a social science. So why? Because of the employment or the application of the scientific methods. So when we study human society, we do not study them haphazardly. We have a system of doing it. So that's why how we collect our facts are very important. Okay, so that's why it is considered as a scientific study. And we study human behavior, we don't study animal behavior, so it is outside of our field. Okay. So when sociology studies societies and social interactions, it is to develop theories, So how human behavior is shaped by our social life, and at the same time how our group life, and how group life is affected by individuals. So when you look at sociology, by the term itself, social, so our concentration is on society actually by right, okay, by discipline. But we are not ruling out the importance of individuals. By right, you cannot get a society without individuals, without persons. But at the same time, you cannot have individuals doing whatever that they want unruly in the society. So that's why society is there. So one of the functions of society, control, as a social controlling mechanism. Okay. But at the same time, individuals are important too. When you talk about the sociological perspective, so if you look at the definition, the systematic study of human society, so it is a distinct guided by sociological perspective. So here, when you talk about sociological perspective, you're talking about the view that sees general patterns of society in the lives of particular people. What it means is that individuals' behavior, when we do it over and over again, they create patterns. So in sociology, that's why sometimes, we have students who are doing their PhD, masters and whatnot. They are coming from physics, chemistry. They're trying to tell us, why do we need to study, sociology when you are using statistics? We are not using mathematics. We are using statistics. So we always have probability. Because we are studying human behavior. We are not studying, something, under a microscope. So things which do not change. Human beings, there are so many factors that could change them. So because of that, then how do you study sociology then? Something, human behavior, how do you study it? So because there is a structure, what we call social structure. Just like a physical structure of a building, there is a structure in the society. How do you get to this structure? We are talking about actions, social reactions, and social relationships, which are patterned. When things are patterned, means they are being done over and over again. How do you know a family is a family? Can you ask someone, give me a family? You can't do that. Okay. So you know a family when you see, an adult male, an adult female, and a child. Immediately, even though you have not gone and asked them, are you a family? But you describe it as it is a family, because there is a pattern. Just like when you talk about a classroom does not have to be within 4 walls. You can have your classroom, at the riverside. For example, like in IIM, we have a riverside. Sometimes we bring our students to the riverside and have a class there. And if someone passes by, then they will say, oh, what is that? Oh, this is Dr. Aisha's class. Without the 4 walls. Because there are certain kind of actions and behaviors that we do which are patterned for us to know that it is politics. This is this is family. This is education. Okay, so this is how we look at things from the sociological. Like I say here, it is the ability to see the relationship between individual experiences and larger society. This term is very important in sociology. We are talking about sociological imagination. It's not that you are imagining now that you are not here, you're having a lunch somewhere. But we are talking about imagining from the social perspective. Means your individual behavior or your individual experience is not just individual. It is very, very social. So you will be able to look at, for example, your personal problems, and it is not just personal, it is very social. For example, finding a job. You put a blame on yourself that how come, I studied, I got a 4-year degree, I could not get a job. Something must be wrong somewhere with me, But actually, it is not just an individual problem. It is very much related to the social problem. Maybe your government is not able to provide certain jobs. So that's why they make you study for your postgraduate. For example, if you were to look at it from the sociological lens, we look at it as you are trying to make sure that you retain the students, in the higher education so that they cannot go out there and flood the market. Because there is no job for them, for example, after COVID-19. So this is how you see things, from the social perspective. Or if you were to look at sex, for example, in sociology, we differentiate sex and gender. Okay, sex is a physical term, but gender is a social term. So we are not talking about your physical characteristics, in your body, but we are looking at, by being a female, what can you get in your society? For example, if you are in a family of 5 children, if you are 4 of the children are girls and one is a boy. Even though the girls could be smarter, but they might not get the opportunity, to go to university because it is reserved to the boy, for example. So being a female is not just about being a female. Being a female is about whether what you can enjoy and not enjoy in your society. What more if you are in a society which has very prescribed custom, tradition, and culture ingrained in it. For example, if you were to be in China back then, we were talking about 10 years back, when you have this one-child policy, for example. One-child policy is not just about, because people look at it as 1 + 1 is 2, It doesn't work that way in human society. So if you are in a society where the culture is giving preference to males, you're going to have a problem. Because if you can just have one child, can you imagine which one do you want to have, a boy or a girl? For which in your culture, the boy is the one who is going to carry the name of the family forward, for example. So there is, it could resort to other problems, other social problems in the society. For example, we talk about ferticide, killing a fetus of before born, pre-born baby girl, for example. Okay, so there are so many different things that happen, in our society. When you look at it from the sociological lenses, you will see it different. Okay, so this guy, okay, because he's a French guy, I do not know how to pronounce his name. I've been asking my student who could speak French, Augustin, Auguste Comte, whatever it is, the spelling is that. So he is considered as the father of sociology because he coined the term sociology. So we are talking about socius means social, being with others, and also it's a Greek term, and logos means the study. So this is to describe a new science that would engage in the study of society. So for this guy especially, because he was very fascinated, with pure science. So that's why he wanted to study human behavior in such a manner that you can study it as you study the physical world. Because we are talking about certainty. When you use scientific method, it's always about certainty, it's about prediction. Human beings, we would like to know what you could do, in the future, to predict the future. So when you use science, there is a higher probability that you can predict the future. So that's why he employed this scientific method into studying human society or human behavior. So, but as we understand, again, the subject matter is not about human being biologically, but human being socially. So that's why it is very difficult. Okay, so, but whatever it is, whatever the reservation that we have, but sociology is a science, because of the employment of scientific method. So for him, he looked at societies as they are contained, with social statics and social dynamics. When he says social statics means, in our society, we have something which is stable, okay? And we have another part of it, which is what we call social dynamics. Social dynamics, we are talking about conflict, okay? Forces for conflict and change. So human society, basically, we have stability and we also have change. These two things are the interests of sociologists. So because of that, we even have perspectives explaining social stability and social conflict. What we call, I'm not going to discuss the perspective, it's going to be very lengthy. But basically, we have what we call structural functionalism, where we concentrate on stability, and we have social conflict theory, where we concentrate on the conflict. So the problem is, in reality, human societies are both. We have stability and we have conflict. We cannot have stability all the time. For example, if you're talking about politics, if it is too stable, you will not have opposition. If you do not have opposition, then when you are there for too long, you could create bad things in the society. So at the same time, we cannot have conflict all the time, because or else you cannot develop your society. So Augustin, he is known, when you talk about positivism. Positivism is you're talking about when you study something, especially in your society, it it would be best understood by using scientific inquiry. So that's why when we have in methods, we have quantitative and qualitative. Positivism will go for the quantitative part because you're talking about quantification, numbers. But in reality, many things cannot be using numbers. So that's why we also have now the later trend to go into qualitative research. Okay. So this is another guy which is very important in sociology, but rarely being put, in the forefront. And even if he were to be discussed, they always put a window in a book or in a footnote to show that it is not important. But actually, his contribution in sociology is very vast, actually, by right. So Ibn Khaldun, if you were to look at the time period, he appeared earlier even than Augustin. And people even come up with a theory saying that Augustin would have come across his book, the Muqaddimah. Okay, so but that is another story. But whatever it is, if you were to talk about sociology, he is called as the father of Eastern sociology. But by right, he's the father of sociology because he came, more than 400 years earlier than Augustin, because he was talking about ilmu al-umran. Practically, ilmu al-umran is sociology. Okay, so I'm not going to discuss all these things about Ibn Khaldun, but at least to expose to you how he did, because this is a book, even though the name is the Muqaddimah, it's not the Muqaddimah of 10 pages. The Muqaddimah, the translated version, more than 200 pages. And he wrote it within a short period of time in a Bedouin society. Okay? So when he wrote this, if you were to look at the chapter headings, they are very systematic. And all these chapter headings are very much related to all the things that we study, the different fields in sociology. For example, when he started discussing, in the Muqaddimah, he talked about human civilization in general. You go from the general to the specific. This is very systematic. Okay? So the various kinds of different societies and whatnot. Then he talked about desert civilization. So when we talk about desert civilization, in the Malaysian context, we don't have desert, but we have our kampung, our village, So this is for people who are in the Middle Eastern countries, then they have this, what they call badawah. Okay, so desert civilization. Okay, they talk about the reports on the tribes and the different nations, a savage nation or so-called uncivilized nations. And after that, they talk about dynasties. This is when we talk about politics. Later on, the other slide, we'll look at how we match it with whatever that we have in sociology. And he talked about sedentary civilization. Because when we talk about desert civilization, they are nomadic. They are moving from one place to the other. But when we talk about sedentary civilization, you're talking about people who start to settle down in one place. So that means you start to create urbanization. So, and on crafts, we talk about how people make a living. So this is very related to economy. And the last one, he talked about science, the acquisition and study. So he talked about science. And he even claimed, when we talk about this ilmu al-umrah, he was the one who started it. Because he's an Arab, it's a different culture. But he said he is the one who started, talking about this, how you view the society from the reality of the society from a very systematic way. For example, observation. He make observation, he make comparison, he make historical analysis. These are all the methods that we have today in sociology or in social sciences. So if you were to look at it from today's perspective, when he talked about, the first chapter is about human or social ecology. Okay. Then the chapter 2 about desert civilization or desert society, we are talking about rural sociology. In sociology, we also study rurality, or government chef, that's a chef, And chapter 3, practically, he was talking about political sociology. He talked about dynasties, how the different dynasties rose, and went down. And in chapter 4, he was talking about urban sociology. It is very much the concentration of sociology today, because we are known to study contemporary societies, urban societies, and how they navigate themselves in these different social relationships. And the fifth one, he's talking about economic sociology. Okay, so it is a very important part, in sociology to study economy and how people make a living, and the way you make a living affects you. So because of that, his Muqaddimah is considered one of the unique or unusual knowledge, because we're talking about 400 years, more than 400 years earlier than August Comte, a guy, in what they call it, actually he was in Morocco. So we're talking about this from that point of view. So I'm giving you an example, of the concept of culture. Even though this is actually by right, he is a social anthropologist, but our department is always together sociology and anthropology. And culture also is the business of sociology. We are talking about the definition of culture to show how, if you are a Muslim sociologist, and how are you going to be aware of the definitions that you use in your class, especially or when you try to share the knowledge. So it says a culture is a complex whole which include, the knowledge, belief, art, law, moral, custom, and all these things they say are acquired by man as member of society. So here, what you have to bear in mind is that, especially the word belief. For Muslims, belief is not culture, because this is something that you cannot change. The way you look at it, culture is something which is man-made. So you create culture. So in this manner, if you were to look at belief, then Islam will be interpreted as something that you create. But it is not man-made, it is God-made. This is how we understand it. Okay? So you have to be very careful. So if you are in IUM, you could tell your students, okay, please be aware that your belief system, Islam is not man-made, it is God-made. But how do you interpret, how do you go about doing it is very cultural. For example, we say you have to cover your aura. Then you have to cover your aura. It doesn't matter in what manner you want to cover your aura. As long as everything is covered, you have already complied to the basic tenet, whatever is it, in the teaching. Okay. Now we go to the origins of sociology. I don't know how much time do I have. I think I talk quite fast. Okay. When you look at the origins of sociology, I'm trying to match at least, what is happening in the Muslim world or in the Muslim civilization and what is happening in the Western civilization. Because sociology, we consider it as it is a knowledge from the West, So because of that, they have their own origin, and their origin is very much related to how they believe in things, Okay, so it says here, what are the origins? The birth of sociology. Sociology was itself the result of powerful social forces that happened in the Western society. Before we go into that explanation, I want to come up with this to bring out this term, self-fulfilling prophecy. Whether your belief is right or wrong, it's not important. But what I'm trying to say is that when you believe in something, you make things materialized. You make things happen. So this is the power of a belief system. Okay. So a self-fulfilling prophecy is a sociological term used to describe what happens when a belief influences people's behavior in a way that it ultimately shapes reality. Just like, sometimes you are so angry. Some people, they believe in horoscope. So they say, oh, today is going to be a bad day. Then all of a sudden you set your mind. Everything that is supposed to be a good day becomes a bad day. Because you believe in it, you somehow gear your actions and behavior toward it, and it become a reality. Okay. So self-fulfilling prophecy show how powerful, our beliefs, good or bad. I say these expectations, what makes you, making things, a reality in your life. Okay. So, why I come up with this, bring out the definition just now, because when you look at how sociology evolves, because sociology is considered one of the youngest among the social sciences. But we see how the changes that happen. And I try to put it, together with how the Muslim civilization, in the Muslim civilization, But what happened if you're talking about the Greeks and the Romans, they were thriving. Even the Greeks, even before the, what they call it, the Christian era, So then after that, the Romans, the Romans practically until the 6th century, it was about to go down, But when you look at in the Muslim history, that was the rise of the civilization with the birth of the Prophet in 570, the 6th century. So you see the different history, how it happens. So when the Western civilization went down, with the coming down of the Roman, especially civilization, we are looking at what they call the Dark Ages, but we did not use the Dark Ages term, because it has a very negative connotation, so they call Middle Ages. So practically in Europe, what happened is that people start to go into different tribes and scattered everywhere. Okay, so in the Middle Ages, we are talking about farming and small-scale manufacturing. If you want to look at it, this origin in two ways. We are looking at it from the economic point of view, and later on we're going to look at it from the political point of view or ideological point of view. So from the economic point of view, we are looking at industrialization, how people make their living. So how industrialization comes into being. So in the Middle Ages, what happened is that they were concentrated on farming, small scale manufacturing. They did make something, but small scale using handicraftsmanship. Okay, we are not using machines yet. Then when we talk about at the end of the 18th century, we start to search for new energy. So this is where the guy who created the steam engine, who discovered the steam engine, it becomes very important because it could transfer you from one place to the other very fast. So because of that, if you were a farmer back then, you might not want to farm on a big plot of land too much because your harvest might not be able to be used by you alone. So with this new energy source, you are able to transport, all your harvest to other places or to other cities, for example. And in the end of the 18th century, we talk about this is when people start to go into what we call mechanization. So we start to use machines. So because of that, the workplace become very big. So large anonymous workforces. You have many people working with you, you do not know them. In a farming community, you work for your father, you work with your father. You understand what I mean? So your workplace, you can cry in front of your father because he is your father, but at the same time, he is also your boss. So you are talking about him personality, But when you, personality, when you talk about the end of the 18th century, when you work in a factory, for example, you cannot cry in front of your boss. Even if your boss scolded you, you could not do anything. Because it's a very large, anonymous workforce. So you work professionally so far. Okay? So large scale production. We are not talking about small scale. We are talking about mass production. Why? So that's why the price is going down, because you are making things in the same mold. So that's why you can make things, many things, in the shortest period of time. So because of that, there is a movement of a system of production. So you can, all this product, can go and reach different groups of people. Okay? And because of that, there is a weakening of what you call community influence. When you are in a simpler society, for example, farming community, your bond is very strong. Okay? So everything that you do, will be known by the members of the society. But when you are in the urban setting, nobody knows you. So that's why it says here the weakening of the community influence. So there are good things, there are bad things, when you look at this, where you get your privacy, but unfortunately to be too private also is not good because with whom are you going to talk to? So in a simple community, everybody knows one another. Okay? So that's why when I was talking about sociological imagination just now, I gave you the example of sex, but there is another example. this is a very important example always given to the student, in their first year when they studied sociological perspective. We are talking about suicide. Suicide is the most, if you want to look at it from the individual social point of view, sociological imagination is as such that we take an individual action and make it social. So suicide is the most personal thing that you could do because it is your life. Nobody can take your life except you yourself if you commit suicide. And nobody should bother because this is your life anyway. But from the sociological point of view, we look at it as it is not an individual action. Committing suicide, it is very much a social action. It is very much related to your society. People don't just simply wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to find, the tallest building and jump. There must be reasons of why you wanted to do it. Maybe, the pressure, the life pressure. I always give the example to the students, your parents force you to take sociology, you don't want to take sociology, you want to take psychology, for example. It could happen that way. Or, what more if you are in a society where suicide is quite acceptable as part of the culture. For example, Japanese society. They have harakiri, they have kamikaze. Can you imagine? So, it would, your society kind of like prod you to commit suicide, in a way. Or, if you look at the Indian society back then, for women, if your husband passed away, you have to jump into the fire together with him. So you also commit suicide together with him, even though you do not want to, but you are forced to by your society. Living, as a widow, it's like, dead. It's better for you to die. So it shows how the influence of society is very big, in your life. Before we look at the political change, in the Middle Ages, they look at society, it's an expression of God's will. So everything you go back to God. For example, when you are in a farming community, say why there is no rain, God must be angry. That's why we don't have rain. So we have to give a sacrifice to God. But unfortunately, women will always be the sacrifice. Unfortunately, women will be slaughtered and whatnot in order to give to the God in order to get the rain for farming, Then after that, there is a change, gradual attack of tradition. This is when, people like Hobbes, Locke, Adam Smith start to come in with the new idea about reasons and whatnot. You should use reason, you shouldn't go back to God. So this is where later on I will show that there is a difference between Islam and the Western understanding, of science. Science from the Islamic point of view, we have never separated your spiritual life and your physical life. It is part and parcel. It comes together. If you get a good living, you get good risk, is because of God, endowment to you. But if you are from the Western perspective, because of whatever that they went through, that's why I said self-fulfilling prophecy just now, their history is very different from the Muslims' history. The Muslim history, we have never separated your physical life and your spiritual life. But the Western history, because of whatever that they experience, that is how it become that way. We talk about secularization, secularism. So they start separating the physical life and the spiritual life because of their experience. So that's why it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So different civilization went through whatever that they went through because of whatever the belief system that they have. So Hobbes, Locke, and Smith, for example, they come up with reasoning, talk about, you should use reason, in order to understand what is going on in your society. Okay. Do I still have time? 10 minutes?
Yeah, you have only 5 minutes left, but because you start late, we can extend about 10 minutes.
Okay then. Then there is a shift to self-interest, something like personal liberty, rights. We talk about equality. We talk about fraternity. This is the time, So that's why when you talk about personal liberty, you are always pointing it together with individual rights. So that's why it's very impersonal. So that's why when you are in the urban society, it is very impersonal. Because you want individual right, you will not encroach into other people's right. So because of that, you are not living like in a close-knit society. Okay. So, and the most important thing is we talk about French Revolution. This is when the political change happens, in terms of ideological change. So if you were to look at the French Revolution, it is the accumulation of so many events for which, back then they believe in the kingship, the king is the ruler. So then they say, why should we give our obedience to the king and loyalty to the king? When they start to check, they find out that the king did not really share the bounties with them. The king tried his might by having the help from the church in order to support whatever that the king did, By right, the king is not that religious, but the church is religious. So what happened is that the king and the church, they help one another in order to control the people. But people start to realize when their stomach is empty. So something must be wrong in this equation. So that's why the people rose up and went against the kingship. So that's why if we talk about something, democracy started in France. So people start to say, oh, okay, I should have individual right. I should choose my own leader. Why should I give my trust to the king when they did not do anything to us, or for us? Okay. So if you were to look at this Islamic civilization, in terms of the timeline, so we look at the Prophet Muhammad, he was born in 570, so this is the 6th century and the 7th century. So this is the beginning part of the downfall of the Western civilization and the rise of the Muslim civilization. Okay, so and we also have the Khulafa ar-Rashidin after the Prophet. At least we have Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman and Ali. Okay, then we have the Umayyad dynasty. We have the Abbasid. And then we also have the Mamluk Sultanate. And the last one, we are talking about Turkey, Ottoman Empire. So why I'm showing this, not to say that it is better, no. What I'm trying to say is that the self-fulfilling prophecy just now, from the Muslim point of view, or Islamic point of view, the Western self-fulfilling prophecy is that, the promise is that if you separate your life, your physical life from your spiritual life, you will be successful. This is what is happening. But from the Muslim point of view, if you separate your life from your spiritual life, that means it is a promise of your downfall. So if you look at the Muslim civilizations, the different dynasties, why they went down? Because they started to not think too much about religion. They start to separate religion from their life. The kings start to be more infatuated with wealth, with women, with horses, with all these things. So that's why it was a downfall. So it's like self-fulfilling prophecy, a promise. So that's why we went to different civilization. So Muslim civilization has never separated your physical life and your spiritual life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
We
may have a Q&A question first.
Okay.
Okay, if anyone have a question, you can raise up your hand or you can chat. You can type in your chat box. Oh, there is question here from Aisah Nurdurani.
Let me check where is the chat box. I could not see my chat box. See.
Okay. She asked about something else.
Okay.
Anyone have question? You can raise up your hand.
You can ask me directly then. It will be easier.
Okay, from Nurul, she asked, is the physical society similar to netizen society?
Netizen society?
Yeah, she
you're
asking
talking
about
the online. No. How to say this? For sociologists, we are studying the influence of a group of society, on individuals. Netizen is a group of society, but it's just that it is online. You can't see them. But are they representing a human being? Yes, they are representing. They have their own thoughts. It's just that they are being shielded. So they are behind the screen and they do not show their face. So people might be angry with me lah, but I will say that it is coward lah. Okay. So if you want to say something, you have to say something face to face. But maybe I'm coming from the older generation. But today people would rather hide, for whatever reasons that they have. But netizen is a group of a very potent new type of society today. And they influence you definitely. I did mention about the potency of the society, but at the same time, I also would like to urge, for us to be individually strong. So that's why in Islam, when they talk about teaching your kids, you are teaching your kids about aqidah. Okay? Ibadah is important. For example, rituals, praying. Praying is important. But the taqwa, the piety is more important than the praying. I'm not saying, please do not quote me that I don't have to pray. What I'm trying to say is that if you believe that you need to pray and you have this taqarrub, your feeling, your closeness to God, it doesn't matter wherever you are, you will pray. You do not need people to check on you whether you are praying or not. So that's why this is what you have to instill in your kids. So you don't have to worry when you are not in front of them, they are going somewhere, they are still doing what they are supposed to do. So that's why in the Quran, all the things about piety, about taqwa, they are more than about ibadah. Okay? Because without your taqwa, without your belief in God, strong belief in God, you will not do what you are supposed to do. But the ibadah part is about sound, for example, fasting. Nobody knows whether you fast or not. Only you know yourself. So if you have already instilled in your children that, this is part and parcel of your life, your connection to God, you do it not because you are scared of God or because you fear God, but this is your obligation to God. You will do it. Okay? So just like whatever it is, it doesn't matter what type of society that we have, netizens, citizens, or whatnot. It has to be guided by something. So your belief system is very important. So when you talk about rumor mongering, fitnah, rumor mongering is wrong physically, is wrong, through online. You cannot just simply blast someone with whatever accusation without having a fact to back you up. You do not want people to say things about you, without having the fact. So it is the same. So if you have this rule, you will not transgress whatever that you are not supposed to transgress. We are talking about morality or whatnot. More importantly, as a Muslim. Wallah.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. There is one more question also from Rosaini. He asking about how does Qada and Qadar play in this human society, human science.
We talk about Qada and Qadar, we are talking about what has been set for us and what we can do about it as a Muslim. So the good thing, human beings, our creation, we are ahsani taqwim, we are the best creation. The best creation for which we are very different from the angels, we are very different from the other creatures that God created. Okay. So for human being, we have this choice. Okay. So when you have a choice, you believe that you have a choice, then you have to make the right choice. Qadar, there are things which are definite. For example, you die at certain time. God say, you're going to die, definitely. When you're going to die, He has already prescribed for you. But there are many other things that you do based on your own decisions. You decide whether you want to go to your classes or not. Sorry, this is not a group of students, young students. But usually if I were to talk to my students, I will tell them, you decide whether you want to go to the class or not. You decide whether you want to wake up in the morning or not someone else, So we are given a choice. You want your life to be positive or not? You want your life to be negative or not? You want to trust people or not? You do not want to trust people, or you want to look at the world as fighting against you. You're very angry with the world. It's your decision. So we make a decision in our life. Every day we make decisions. So when we talk about qada and qadar, there are things that God predestined for us, but there are also many things that we decide in our day-to-day life. So make the right decisions.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
Okay.
Maybe this is the last one of the question because we have passed some of the time, and there is many question in the chat box, Doctor. This from, I think, let me check. This from,
how is Islamization of sociology different from Islamic sociology? Also, what is the difference between Islamic sociology and sociology of Islam? Okay. I'm not going to dwell into all the jargons that they use. Okay, this is how we understand Islamization. Islamization has evolved for 4 or 5 decades. When it was introduced in IIUM, in the National Islamic University, I was a student at that time. I was the second batch of IIUM student from IKHS. We have been exposed to this. When we were students, we were questioning. Our lecturers have been nagging us, about this Islamization, how to integrate, doing this, doing that, and whatnot. They say, I'm in sociology, I don't know how to speak Arabic, for example. And then after that, they forced me to take fiqh and usul fiqh. I'm doing fiqh and usul fiqh. So this is to integrate these two things, Islamization of knowledge is not about, when you do your research, you have to mention, Islam is doing this, Islam is doing that. No. As long as the knowledge does not transgress whatever has been ordained by God, it is Islamic. For example, for my thesis, my PhD thesis, so I'm a social gerontologist. I studied old people. I studied aging and old age. So what I did was that I did a research in an Islamic, institution, old folks home, but for Muslims. Whether it is intentionally or unintentionally. But what I'm trying to say is that in my thesis, it is full with Islamic content. Without me telling that I'm doing it Islamically, I'm doing Islamization. One of the reasons of why these old people are going to the old folks home, I said, how come, you are old, you go to the old folks home for which you are going to see more old people, won't you be reminded of you being old? What's so great about being with old people? Do you understand? And they live behind their big houses in the village to do that. So one of the reasons of them going to this pondok, they call it, Islamic institution, is that to study religion. You see, can you imagine you leave behind all your belongings and you stay in a place where it is so small, the room is so small, and then you are staying with other old people just to study Islam. And it is at the end of your life. Can you imagine? So this is Islamic. Just like when I talk about Ibn Khaldun before. When Ibn Khaldun studied the Badawah, the Bedouin society, he explained everything about these people practicing, especially when it comes to their religion. And then the Western researchers or thinkers said, Ibn Khaldun is not Islamic. Actually, Ibn Khaldun is Islamic. You know why? When you study a society, it's not about you. It's about the society that you study. If for them, Islam, or it doesn't matter if you are not in the Muslim society, if religion is important to you and it affects your life, you as a researcher cannot deny the fact that religion is important to them. That is what you are supposed to explain. If you cover it up because you do not believe in religion, you are the one who is not objective. You are the one who is not scientific. Understand? I hope that answers your question.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, Doctor, for your wonderful sharing this session today. And inshallah, we will meet you in next session, inshallah.
Inshallah.
But if we have time, we can answer many questions because there is our participant have asking a lot. But inshallah, in the next session, we will continue with our doctors, inshallah. And thank you so much for all the participants also to stay with us until in the end. And we have here about 148 participants here. And might be also we have also in the YouTube and also on the Facebook, because there's some places still at night, doctor. Okay. Okay, with that, inshallah, we will see all our participants again in our next session on the same Saturday, on Saturday, next session, inshallah. With that, we end with our dua. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wa bihi nasta'in wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.